I'm Lisa Adams, council member from District 7, and this is the first of a number of lasts for me. This is my last time to conduct a formal council meeting. Welcome you all here, and we're happy to have you with us. It is our tradition to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then following the Pledge of Allegiance, we have a special treat. We have young violinists from El Sistema, yeah, I got it right, okay, at Salty Cricket, and these are young violinists who have learned to play in a system that is after school at Jackson Elementary, but these students are not elementary school students, as you can see, unless you think they're kind of big for elementary school. And this is a program that the city has helped support, as well as a number of other great organizations. So we will get to hear from them immediately following the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you'll remain standing, we will hear the national anthem. I would like to invite you to come up, put your music stands down for a minute, and have your director and each of you come up and tell us your name. We're thrilled to have you here with us. And then if you will come over here, I have a little something for you to take home with you. Right there. Tell us your name. Yep.
My name is Hortensia Castañeda.
Thank you for being here. And then come on over here and I have something for you.
My name is Caitlin Jensen.
Thanks, Caitlin.
My name's Isa Reyes.
Thank you.
My name's Marianne Sanchez.
Thank you, Marianne.
My name is Susan Arcos.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Arcos.
Thank you, our sole male. Thank you so much. And join me with giving them another round of applause. Thank you so much. And just if you're wanting to know, if you, we gave them a little city council pin to thank them for being here so they can trade it, wear it, save it, whatever they choose. We really appreciate having that. We, at our meetings, review the standards of conduct each time. First of all, I'll remind you to silence your cell phones. We had a little reminder of that during the national anthem, so you're welcome to have your cell phone, but if you can put it on silence, that would be great. And we ask you to please be respectful during our meeting tonight. During other people's comments, avoid cheering, jeering, or clapping. We ask that everyone be respectful. We don't want anyone to feel intimidated. We also know that even if you're giving them a big vote of hooray, I love what you're saying, this isn't the time. You can thank them in the hall. That would be perfect. We also ask you to help us take care of this historic meeting room. It has been restored to make it look how it was originally, and it matters to us that it be well cared for. So don't stand on the chairs, don't lean against the paintings. And also, if you have a sign or any other prop, be sure that you're not blocking anyone's view with that, and there are some limitations if you have anything long that could be hurtful to someone if you were to swing it around, please don't do that. And also, other than if you are invited, like those young people, to approach the dais, please don't. And if you have something you would like passed out, we have city staff to do that. May I have city staff raise their hand? And let's see, do we have, raise them nice and high so we know, city staff, that you are available to pass things out. The gentleman on the front row there is not city staff, but everyone else was, and you're welcome to give information to them. And our staff is here to help you. Also, if you need parking validations, those same people are available to give you parking validations. And would remind you that during our comment period, we limit you to 2 minutes. It's not because we don't care about what you have to say. It's that look how many there are. And we want you to be able to go home at some point, and we'd like to go home at some point. But we welcome your input. You can send us an email. You can comment by calling in. You can send it to council comments. And we are always interested to hear what you have to say, or you can do it the old-fashioned way, write a letter and mail it in to us. We appreciate that. Tonight, we'll begin with item B on our agenda, which is public hearings. And we have several opportunities for the public to comment tonight. I call people based on comment cards. Can someone wave a comment card so people can see what they look like? Robin, will you? Dan, thank you. And each of the hearings that we're having tonight has a different color card. And so you want to make sure you have the comment card for the thing you want to talk about. And we have specific comment cards, and then we have general comment cards. The general part comes a little bit later in the meeting, but we are having public hearings on particular items to begin with. And again, remember to be respectful. Don't block the views of others. And if you have handouts, we will do that. And as soon as I have comment cards, we will begin with item B1, which is a resolution for a lease fee waiver that has been requested for a portion of Rio Grande Street. And the council will accept public comment and consider adopting a resolution authorizing the waiver of lease fees for a portion of city-owned public right-of-way located at approximately 200 Rio Grande Street. And I have comment cards. This is the color for the Rio Grande. We'll begin with Douglas Cotant, and then we'll hear from Ryan Parker. I'll read two at a time so you know when you're on deck. Mr. Cotant, welcome back, and please come up to the mic.
Thank you. I'm not sure what this means, but I know that there have been problems at Rio Grande. I've followed it on the news, and I've heard speculation or talk about the possibility of the city closing part of Rio Grande. I know that there have been problems like shootings and assaults and everything else, but I would appreciate it if you could leave Rio Grande Street open so that when people come to visit Salt Lake City, they would be able to know the history of Rio Grande Street. And of course, before I left on my vacation, I heard that they were going to close a portion of Rio Grande Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cotant. Ryan Parker, followed by George Chapman.
Hello, City Council. In regards to the lease fee waiver request by the state, I stand against it simply as I feel the state bullied their way into doing this. I feel that they pressured the administration by terrifying the public, saying that things are going to go back to the way they were. So normally I would say, at this portion that I stand against the fence and anything around it, but if this is just simply discussing waiving fees, I think they came up with a number of $67 million, so I feel the state, if they wanted this street bad enough, they can pay for it.
Thank you very much. George Chapman, followed by Christian Harrison.
Okay, you've heard me say this before. This does not make sense. This plan is not fleshed out. It doesn't make sense. You're talking about forcing anyone who wants services to have some kind of an ID card, which is going to just encourage the homeless to move out of the other areas. Patrick Leary, who I love, said it right. He said, this is to remove the criminal element from the Rio Grande area. But the jails are full. We filled the 300 beds in 2 weeks. So where are the criminals going to go? They're not going to go to Rio Grande Street. They're going to go to everywhere else. And they're already everywhere else. James, you know that. Lisa, you know that. Charlie, you're right. The Salt Lake County mayor is not adequately funding public safety, so we don't have the jail beds, we don't have the prosecutors to keep the criminal element out. Right now, they're right next to bus stops, school bus stops. We just had a problem last week, and it was taken care of by the Utah Highway Patrol. But that's where they're going, and that's the issue we have if we close Rio Grande Street. It doesn't make sense. I urge you not to pass this tonight, but scoot it off to the edge, say for a week or two, so you can have some leverage in negotiating with the state, because that's what it really needs. You shouldn't just be handing them this blank check without a real plan. This is not a plan. This is an insult to homeless, and when it happened in San Francisco, they learned within 3 months it doesn't work. They actually discouraged homeless from going to a nice, comfortable, safe area. They had storage and everything they needed. They resisted. They didn't like the rules. They didn't like the people peering over them. It actually closed after 3 months. And I sent you that last year thinking it'd be good. Nope, I was wrong. It closed in 3 months. So don't give the state Rio Grande Street. Treat the homeless with respect and ask the state for more
time
in their plan. It doesn't make sense the way it's presented to you.
Thank you very much. Christian Harrison, followed by David Garbett.
Good evening. You all know my work in the downtown area. I'd like to encourage you to give the state the support they need for Operation Rio Grande to succeed. I think that a law and order element for the overall, as part of a balanced approach to homelessness is crucial to allowing the folks that are seeking services to do so in a safe manner. I'm heartened that the state is finally on board with this project. It's taken them many years, and I think that I'd like to see them have the opportunity to succeed with this project. And of course, we all know that chain link fence on a street is not permanent. It's an opportunity for us to let them, give them the opportunity to succeed and to follow that closely. And so I urge you to move forward and to adopt the resolution.
Thank you very much. Before we hear from David Garbett, who will be followed by Bernard Hart, if you have an open seat next to you, will you please raise your hand? Okay, you can come in and find a spot, and there is also overflow seating directly across the hall. If you want, and you can watch us on TV there if you want to do that. All right, David, thank you for being patient.
Council members, thank you. David Garbett with the Pioneer Park Coalition. Thank you for taking my comments. We support the fee waiver for the state for this space. For too long, the city has not been able to provide basic safety in this neighborhood. And with Operation Rio Grande, it feels different. And the great thing is that service providers are seeing that the number of people seeking services at the Road Home, at the St. Vincent's Food Kitchen, at the 4th Street Clinic, are maintaining at the same level they were before Operation Rio Grande. So let's keep the momentum going. This is certainly in the public interest to promote safety. So we'd like to see you grant the fee waiver. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bernard Hart, followed by Marita Hart. And I don't have any other cards after Ms. Hart. If you would like to comment on this, please fill out a card, and I'd be happy to invite you up.
I spend time in the morning, 3 mornings a week down on Rio Grande Street, working with the homeless out in the street. And I've yet to make sense of anything that's happening down there. I just don't know how to talk about it. It just seems like mass confusion. All of a sudden, people showed up in brown shirts and nightsticks and police cars and on bicycles and running up and down the street, harassing and bullying, and with whatever intent they choose to label these actions, people that are really more problems to them, most of the population, more problems to themselves than they are to the community. I have no problem with drug dealers and whatever, but from what I understand what's going on down there, the drug dealers aren't being arrested. They're just moving. And now it's just a matter of the people that actually need services actually being harassed into doing something. We run a program at the Library for the Homeless, and the population there has increased since this has happened. We had close to 60 people 2 days in a row, and the best we did before is 40. They're leaving the area. These are people that, I don't know why they can't do what we're doing, why they can't work with the homeless in a sensible way, in an effective manner, and bring them into services and do what has to be done without using people in uniform and with guns and on motorcycles, people on motorcycles on the sidewalk, and now fencing and police ID cards. This is over-the-top reaction to a simple, maybe for me a simple, but a problem that has been with us for a long time, and people are frustrated, and I think these are the reactions to that frustration. This council now has a chance to put the brakes on and say, let's talk. Let's think about this before we go any further. Let's bring some people to the table and discuss this. I haven't seen anybody else involved in this do that. Since the beginning, I've had confidence in this group to step in and actually represent the homeless and speak to the homeless and make sense of this. So I hope you take the opportunity to do that. And if you do, I thank you for whatever decision you make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marita Hart, followed by James Berenson. I always have a hard time reading. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marita Hart, and we have the Tai Chi program at Library Square, and we're averaging about 40 to 50 homeless individuals, and we're getting a lot of feedback about what's really happening here, and it's hard for me to follow Bernie because he kind of took all my words, but they're not liking, they're feeling like they can't go down there, excuse me, can't go down there anymore. And I don't think that was your intention, but that's what's happening. So I don't like the fencing. It seems they're calling it like a prison. So is that what we really want? And then the ID cards, have them fill out so much information they don't feel they can fill them out. So that's the feedback we're getting. It doesn't sound right. So I'd like to see if we could halt this a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. James Berenson, followed by Ilauna Gur.
I've talked to y'all about the same problem when you was all trying to force that homeless shelter on Simpson. And like, you know, you cut the cancer up, it's just gonna spread. I asked you guys, if you were so worried about it, why didn't you take the homeless into your house? Show them what successful people look like. But I already know none of you guys will do that because they're homeless, they're contaminated, they're dirty. My question is, how many of you have actually went down and talked to the homeless people? I have. I do almost daily. And, you know, a lot of the common denominator I found with them, they don't like rules, they don't like monitoring, they like the seclusion away from everyone and everything. Don't bother us, we won't bother you. And so instead of forcing these people to conform to the progressive politics that you're trying to in place, why don't you take their cares and their feelings into consideration? I know there's a place on, I think it's like 35th and like 9th or 7th West. It's a big field. Why don't you guys set up a tent city there? It's a temporary solution, but you know, if what these people are saying is correct, you need ID. Why all this data collection? I understand no reason for it. There is something called I think it's the Eighth Amendment, you know, no unnecessary search or seizure. You're seizing these people's identities for what? For what purpose? I used to think it was being about eyes wide shut type stuff. They catch you guys in, like Mr. Sachs, I don't know what he's, or Mr. Luke, I don't know what he's been caught in, but he works for Goldman Sachs. He's an establishment candidate. I remember the conversation you had on August 8th with that Goldman Sachs employee. Your establishment all the way. I'm telling the constituents in our district, yeah, he's establishment. You won't get nothing by him. But, you know, I don't understand why you don't go out and actually physically talk to these people and see what it is that you guys can do to help them instead of forcing them to bend to your guys' will. You're not homeless. You don't know what it's like.
Time.
So for you to interpret what's best for them, I don't think you have any place to do it until you are homeless.
Thank you very much. Ilauna Gurr, followed by Matt Minkovich.
I wasn't planning on speaking, but I live on 400 West and 200 South. And it really did get bad. I remember when the drug dealers moved in and they were on every corner. And all I can say is I'm just grateful that people are paying attention and trying to do something. We have noticed a big difference in drug dealers and people drugged out on our street, right on 400 West, right by our house. We've had a big problem. They just would hang, and between about 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock at night, you'd just see zombies just leaning over, drugged out. So whatever is going on, we've seen a difference as residents. And I do care about the homeless, and that's why I thought this would be good. I've been real concerned about what's going to happen before the new homes come on in 2 years. And from what I understand, this safe zone was to try to put some of the resources, even though it's not the ideal situation, but where people could go and be safe and get real help, get sorted out with people that could truly help them. And so I was really thankful to hear this, because I thought, what's going to happen to these people in the meantime while we're waiting for our new shelters to come on? And it's heartbreaking when you get to know some of these people on the streets, and then they disappear, you know, and you don't know if they're alive or dead. And I think something has to be done. And when people, I hear people all the time.
Thank you very much. Matt Minkovich, followed by Al Khalif.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I have just a few observations, the first of which is gratitude toward you, city administration, state and county officials who are collaborating in an unprecedented way to deal with very, very complex issues. This is not easy stuff, nor did this happen overnight. This has taken us some time to get to this level of desperation. We appreciate the work that each of you is doing. With respect to the safe zone, we appreciate that different partners have worked with us to give us access to the women's entrance of our shelter. We think that will be quite helpful. We know that the collaboration with respect to law enforcement has helped remove dangerous elements from the neighborhood that were vexing the people who are turning to us for service. We have serious problems that lie ahead. There is no doubt about that. We have a severe shortage of deeply affordable housing. We have people that are in desperate need of treatment. There is nothing here that I am telling you that you don't already know. I just want to encourage you to continue to work together with thoughtfulness and a spirit of good faith and cooperation to help us move the needle in the right direction. Permanent supportive housing is desperately needed, and it has been proven effective. That will be one step. Law enforcement helping us to get control of that area has already yielded results. I used to have to set my watch to walk around the perimeter of our facility to check on people to make sure they were breathing. I wasn't very good at it, but I was just one more set of eyes in the neighborhood trying to help out. Did those people go away and are no longer addicted? Of course not. Our problems continue. The challenges continue. Thank you for your work in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Minkovich, Director of the Road Home. Al Khalif and Marlene Little. And as you come up again, I invite you, if you would like a seat, we have them directly across the hall. You can watch on Closed Circuit TV if you choose to. Thank you for being here.
Hi, good afternoon, or good evening, rather. I'm Al Khalife. The E is accented on the end. I wanted to address you guys here. There is a street by the name of Martin Luther King that's also doubles as 600 South. And I look for an African-American neighborhood in the vicinity of the street. It tells me that it must have been an African-American neighborhood there once upon a time, and it was moved out. And I think that's what's going on with the homeless situation going on right now. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper to try to find some more roots, but the African-American church by the name of Trinity AME Church is basically the lifeblood that is a symbol that shows that a community was once vibrant in that area, and I think that's on the agenda. And I kind of get the sense that this is how the leadership of Salt Lake City likes to do things. If the African-American community is too close to the power structure of the city, you have to move them out, right? So this is what you want to do to the homeless. It has a bad stigma on them, so you have to move them out. You have to have the whole state come in, right? And tomorrow, you guys, I'm not going to say you guys, but the state delegation, I think that the governor called in tomorrow for the special session, 2 items of the 4-item agenda has to do with Operation Rio Grande. So I wanted you guys to know that I know there was a neighborhood, it was the Poplar Grove Neighborhood Alliance. They had something back in August, just a few weeks ago back in August, that dealt with the influx of the homeless moving from the current area that's been under martial law. Okay, excuse me. I shouldn't say martial law. I should say Operation Rio Grande. But then they've been moved off. So I'd like to close real briefly by saying I believe Operation Rio Grande is a failed policy of a 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness that shows how the city and the state has squandered millions that was meant to actually help the homeless.
Thank you, Mr. Khalife. Marlene Little, and if there's anyone else, if you would like to fill out a card to address us on Rio Grande, we'd be happy to hear your comments.
I'm Marlene Little. I live over on Riley in the Glendale area, and I catch a lot of buses. I go to the Central Station constantly for buses, so I'm constantly around the homeless. And then, of course, being on 9th West, I'm constantly around people along 9th West. And then there's, and then I like to go over to the Gateway to go shopping. And so I'm kind of around there a little bit. And I decided today to go walking through Rio Grande, and it was pretty good. And then I went, I went over. My biggest problem was over on 4th West and 2nd South. Some guy was kind of blocking the street with his skateboard, and I'm thinking, what are you doing here? You're letting me through, but what are you trying to keep out? And so I'm kind of not sure if this is going to solve a whole lot of problems. I crocheted tons, and so I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention. The guy was speaking in another language, but I was over at the Central Station, and he was propositioning this poor girl. And looking at her feet, I could tell she'd been walking too much, and she's probably was homeless. And she's like, all I heard her say was, all I want is a bath. And it's like, that jerk. And it's like, he's taking advantage of this poor girl. It's like, it's still around. The creeps are still around. They're not, it hasn't going to stop anything. I think maybe making it a walking area is a good idea, not having traffic go through there. It's a good idea. I don't really want to see it go further south. I've heard you say it's going further south. I like to go to the Historical Society, and I like to go to the Rio Grande building. And it's nice to have parking in front of it, because I don't always drive. I don't always take my vehicle, but that's my opinion, and I'm full of them, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Little. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on Rio Grande this evening? It looks like there are a couple more. You want to, if you just filled out a card, you can come up and tell us your name. Thank you. Looks like, you've got to help me with this. I can't read the handwriting very well. Mario Rosales. Thank you. Come on up.
Buenas tardes.
Good evening.
Discúlpenme que no puedo hablar muy bien inglés,
I apologize, my English is not too good,
pero mi esposa va a ayudarme.
but my wife is going to help me.
Good
Yo
wife.
Estoy agradecido con ustedes por el trabajo que ha hecho la policía.
I am grateful to you for the work that the police has done.
Me gustaría que pudiéramos pensar
I would like that we can think
cuántas familias
how many families
que tienen un trabajo en
that
el
have a
Gateway
job
Mall
at the Gateway Mall
se están afectando.
are being affected,
O cuántas familias
or how many families
nos estamos afectando porque vivimos en el área.
we are being affected because we live in the area.
No es un asunto
It's,
meramente
it's,
de
not
los
a,
jóvenes.
it's not an issue just by the homeless.
A los jóvenes se les ha dado oportunidad
The homeless have been given opportunities
para que vayan a diferentes
so they
lugares
can
de
go to
refugio.
different refugee places.
Se han construido diferentes casas de refugio.
You have built refugee homes.
¿Cómo podemos ayudar a alguien que
How-
no se quiere ayudar?
How can we help somebody who do not want to help themselves?
Gracias por la gratitud que tienen ustedes de traer este tema
Thank
aquí
you for bringing this
a la comunidad.
issue to the community.
Pero tenemos que pensar más en
But
las personas
we have to think more on the people
y en los niños,
and the children
que es el futuro de América.
that are the future of America.
Yo creo que esto es una de
I
las
think
cosas
these
más
are one of the
importantes
most important things
que alguien que no
that
quiere
somebody
resolver sus problemas.
that do not want to resolve their own personal issues.
Y me gustaría que
And I would
puedan
like that they can
pensar más en las
think
familias
more about the families
que no tenemos un progreso
that
o
we
que
don't
queremos
have,
progresar
that do not have a progress,
y que queremos tener una familia sana.
and that we want to have a healthy family in our homes.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. And will you help me say your last name without a French accent?
Rosales.
Rosales. Okay. Thank you so much. Are there anyone else who would like to speak tonight? You can speak on both of them. Go ahead, stand up, and then you can fill out a card after you speak. Just give us your name so we have it for the record.
Yeah, so my name is John Prince. I'm a resident and investor downtown. So quick question, I'm getting a little caught up on the issue. My understanding is there's 2 new shelters going in eventually. Is that correct?
And I would tell you this, we are just here to listen tonight,
Okay.
so we can
Well,
have staff answer
let-
that
let
for
me-
you. So staff members, somebody raise your hand so that you can answer his question.
Let me
Okay,
tell
afterwards,
you and
talk to
everyone
them.
here a true story
Okay.
that I wish wasn't true. I had a house on 640 East, 300 South that I recently moved from. I came home from vacation to walk into my house, and there was luggage on the ground. And I thought, that's weird. Why is there luggage on the ground of my house? So I'm walking around. I noticed that there's some soda cans. I walk upstairs. My bathtub is full, and there's candles lit. There's syringes and heroin and meth on my bathroom vanity. And I'm very aware that there's someone still in my house. So I'm looking around. I'm saying, who's here? Who's here? And I go into the area where the toilet is, and there's a naked woman hiding underneath my shelf. Totally true. I mean, completely naked. So I called the police, and I said, you need to get out of my house. And I was pretty worked up. Long story short, the police came, arrested her, confiscated meth and heroin from my house. That's 640 East, 300 South. That's not even very close to Rio Grande. But what happens is the homeless in that area spread throughout the day and go and pillage and look for houses to break into. I've since moved from that area, and I don't invest in that area anymore. I flip houses. I don't even try, I stay away from that area. I drove by Rio Grande today, and it looked, I haven't been in the area a long time because I've avoided the area, but whatever you guys are doing seems to be helping. And I would please encourage you to think long and hard about putting more shelters in different parts of Salt Lake. I too care about the homeless, but I think that you're going to ruin downtown. You're going to drive business owners out of downtown, and you're going to drive people from wanting to live downtown. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And if you will fill out a card for that, they'll make sure you have one. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the leasing of Rio Grande this evening? Come on forward, and you can fill out a card afterwards, but tell us your name, please, when you come up.
It's Jim Webster. I'm going to be speaking on number 6, but also on this one. I moved to an office. I initiated an office. It was probably I'm sure it was the first one on Rio Grande Street, 1977, and lived in that situation for quite a few years, and was familiar, of course, back at the very beginning of when this was happening, and it's been going on all that time. But I would like to comment relative to the displacement of homeless all over the community, particularly in parks. Miller Park is one in particular. The Bonneville Glen area that's owned by, it's privately owned property owned by the Catholic Church. The police know about this. I'm just not so sure everyone does. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Webster. And Mary Daniels?
Good evening, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I understand that there's a mixed bag of humanity about the homeless. I am a person that was in Pioneer Park for 6 years, and in 2015, I moved to a building. I was in Pioneer Park, and I know that there's a problem, and the problem kept growing by the year. I went out in 2008, and I came out in 2015. And the problem keeps growing, and there needs to be solution. But in the meantime, there are people that still need help. There are people that still need provisions. And I have set up a service myself to provide some of those provisions for the people while they're stressing and struggling. You will decide what you want to do, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to do it. But I am here to provide for the people in the meantime. And you can't save the world. You can't help everybody. But in dealing with the people in the last 9 years, I know that there's a lot of sick people out there, there's a lot of needy people out there, there's a lot of drug dealers and a lot of desperate people. But regardless of the fact, they're still alive, and they still have to have provisions. And I can't provide everything, but I will do what I can while the decision is being made. And I have a shop on 1401 South Main. I feed, I clothe, I have an outside tool shop so we repair their bikes for them to come. Regardless of what's happening and what's going on and what decision has to be made, they still have to survive. And I just wanted you to know that I've done that for 10 years, and I'm still available. Thank you.
And we ask that you not clap, even though that is absolutely praiseworthy. So why don't we do what you do when you are doing sign language? Thank you very much for your service to our community. Is there anyone else who would like to speak about closure in Rio Grande? Okay, if you would come forward, and you can fill out a card afterwards. Just tell us your name, okay? Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Nicole Thomas, and I'm a business owner in downtown Salt Lake. I've had a business downtown for 17 years. And was a resident downtown from 1999 to 2006. And I It's Operation Rio Grande has made a big difference downtown. It's the first time in years that I feel safe, my staff feels safe. I'm not worried about my customers running into extreme incidents. We had one today where we had a gentleman sitting on the stairway to the entrance of my store, and he was clearly in dire need of help. He had a half-empty bottle of vodka with him and was opening some prescription pills, trying to get himself help. And we spoke with him, was able to call the downtown number, and they were able to come and help him. But with this road closure, they would be able to take him to a place nearby where he could feel safe and get the treatment. He was talking to himself and saying that there was nowhere to go and nowhere that he felt safe. So I'm in support of the road closure and think that it will be a great step into phase 2 and actually being able to help people into the treatment that they need.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Come on and fill out a card, please, and come forward, Mr. Howell, and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scott Howell with the Pioneer Park Coalition. Thank you to all of you for your dedication and your service to making a difference. Thank you for doing the heavy lifting. Thank you for taking the time to understand what we've all known for a long time, but we haven't stepped up to the plate. I think the most beneficial factor that can be in this whole initiative is we are helping and giving hope to our sisters and brothers that hasn't been there for a long time. This hasn't been an easy journey. I think about the first time I stood before you and talked about the challenges, the problems, and the opportunities. Don't ever forget, at the end of the day, your job is to make a difference in the lives of those that can't have that opportunity. Thank you again. I appreciate the collaboration with the state, the feds, that we have all come together to recognize that this is not a Salt Lake City problem. It is a statewide problem. Thank you again for your service, much appreciated, and you are making a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and be sure and fill out a card. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak about closure of Rio Grande? Okay, come on forward and you fill out a card afterwards. Just tell us your first and last name, please.
My name is, should I speak to the microphone?
Yes, please.
My name's Taylor Almond. I live on State Street in North Temple. Generally speaking, Operation Rio Grande feels like a bait and switch under the guise of a compassionate, caring program. We see a massive increase in incarceration rates, while emergency services across the boards are decreasing, or a net decreasing compared to the incarceration rates, with fewer emergency beds, low barrier emergency beds available over the next couple of years, fewer rehabilitation or drug treatment beds available compared to the number of people that are being arrested for possession charges. Any solution to the problem should center affordable housing and increasing those emergency services rather than, as discussed today, continuing this double standard, this dichotomy between presenting itself as compassionate while being decreasing the things that are compassionate about the program, like closing down the streets, making the place feel less inviting, less comfortable, more shallow and heartless and inhuman, with spotlights and emergency vehicles, police vehicles, flashing lights, et cetera. I'd encourage you to center affordable housing and emergency shelter above other solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jessica Forward. And please, any of you, if I get your name wrong, it doesn't offend me if you correct me.
Hi, thank you. As somebody who has worked not only at the Rio Grande as a service provider, but also in the jail during this whole new Operation Rio Grande thing, it's a great idea, but it's actually not being executed properly. It happened so quickly that all of the service providers haven't been able to actually really work together or come together to get across-the-board solution for any sort of problem. There's no beds available for treatment, so instead of just arresting people, like that gentleman just said, affordable housing is probably the #1 issue. Homeless people are still people. I hope you guys all realize that. And it's not that they don't want to help themselves. It's that, I don't know if any of you guys have been homeless before, but I have. And living in a car is dangerous. Living on Rio Grande is dangerous as well. But putting a fence around it is not going to make it any less dangerous. It's just going to keep people who need services out and make it, I mean, Utah's had a problem with concentration camps before, so let's not, I don't know, step back in history and move forward in a progressive way, working together across the board instead of just arresting people who are down on their luck. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to address the lease for Rio Grande? I want to make sure you have an opportunity. All right. Then if there's no one else who wishes to speak, the council will suspend the rules and take action on this item tonight. Typically, the council receives comment from the public one night and takes action at a later date, but given the need to expedite the action, I will look for a motion to close the hearing.
Madam Chair, I move the council close the public hearing.
Second.
There is a motion from Councilmember Rogers and a second from Councilmember Luke. And is there any discussion? I need to add to close the public hearing, sorry. And no discussion, all right. Then I will look, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes.
Madam Chair, I move that the council suspend the rules and adopt the resolution.
Second.
There is a motion from Councilmember Penfold and seconded by Councilmember Luke. Any discussion? Yes, Councilmember
Madam Chair,
Penfold.
I do want to go back, if I may, to the city attorney, Margaret Plain, and if she could explain for me one more time the process we're following and what the steps are, because this is a resolution concerning the fees related to a lease agreement, and the street has been temporarily closed.
That's correct. Mayor Biskupski executed a temporary closure of the street, the partial closure of the street on August 31st. That authority can only last for 90 days. As part of that, the administration also negotiated a lease with DFCM to use this portion of Rio Grande Street to create a safe space. That lease has two terms, a temporary term, which is currently happening, and then an extension term. The extension term kicks in when three things happen. The first one is that the council adopts a resolution concerning the waiver of the lease fees. That's what's before you tonight. That's a legal requirement when the city is receiving less than fair market value for a property in this case. So the first step is adopt the resolution regarding the waiver of the fees. The second step is the state in the special session that's scheduled tomorrow will be considering legislation to facilitate the street closure. And then if that legislation is adopted and council chooses to, the third step will be that council adopts an ordinance allowing a longer-term temporary closure of Rio Grande, which is contemplated to last through the end of the lease term. The lease is scheduled to last through the closure of the road home. That's predicted for July of 2019 or January 2020, whichever happens sooner. So this is council's first step in this process. The administration did the lease before that. This is your first step. The state has a role tomorrow, and if that happens, then council can decide whether to adopt an ordinance allowing the closure through the closure of the road home, which is also the lease term.
So we'll be seeing this again.
If you so choose, you will be seeing it again. Otherwise, the lease will expire. Without those three things happening, the temporary term of the lease can only last 90 days or through November 30th.
Thank you, Margaret.
Any other? Oh, go ahead, excuse me.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to add as a comment that I support this resolution on the fee waiver, knowing that we don't have adequate solutions going forward for in particular services to our homeless population. And as we are looking at new facilities for that population with an entirely different, newer model for providing those services, and as we're looking to solutions that are beyond the capacity of Salt Lake City because they require state action in regards to mental health care and substance use treatment and intervention. I think it's important that we support the direction, but also continually ask the questions and apply the pressure that the underrepresented populations that we are representing have a voice. And I'm particularly concerned about the state and its ability and authority to fund a lot of the challenges we're facing as a city. In particular, as I mentioned, the mental health component and the substance use component, those are traditionally state-funded efforts. Something like Medicaid expansion would go a long way to fund those programs, and we continue to see resistance on the part of the state. So knowing full well that we have a challenge as a city to provide compassionate services to our population, we also have a challenge as a city to do everything in our power to motivate the state to do the right thing in providing services. And I think that's going to be a really difficult balance going forward. But that certainly is my personal intent as we hopefully adopt this particular resolution and as we look forward to jointly creating solutions. I must say that I have been conflicted because a lot of the challenge that I see around this is related to a sense that people want to make this somebody else's problem. And I think one of the things that's admirable about this body in particular, this city council that I'm so proud to be a member of, is that that is never a topic of discussion for us when we talk about the needs of our residents. And I consider everybody sleeping tonight in Salt Lake City one of our residents. So I have a lot of confidence in this body really leading out on every level, from funding where we are able to fund, and on leadership where we certainly need leadership when representing disenfranchised populations.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much. We now move to public hearing B2, which is an ordinance concerning Lincoln Elementary School South Alley vacation. That it vacates an alley that is city-owned, situated adjacent to properties located between approximately 200 East and 269 East, south of Lincoln Elementary, and behind the homes that front onto the north side of Hampton. I will look for anyone who has a comment on this tonight, and we will begin with Stephen. You got to help me with your last name. Camisia, thank you. And Stephen will be followed by Darren Brooks. Thank you very much, and I apologize. I wasn't sure if those were L's or I's.
Hello, my name's Stephen Camisia, and I'm a property owner in Liberty Wells, specifically the Hampton Avenue that borders on the vacant alley is in our backyard. And the alley's been a concern for us for a long time. Walking through the alley in the back, many of the weeds are waist high. It's an extreme fire hazard. Anybody walking in the what's now Liberty Wells Elementary out in the field, they'll be there. Anybody with a stray cigarette butt or anything could just throw it on the other side of a cyclone fence, and there would be a real fire hazard there. There's also quite a bit of lack of visibility within that area. So at nighttime, it does feel kind of uneasy knowing that people could go back there whenever they want. And so for those reasons, and the reason that if we could get the alley vacated, we could, as homeowners, beautify that area instead of it being so unsightly the way it is now. And thank you for your time and everything you've done to research this issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Camisia. Did I get it right? Okay, thank you. Darren Brooks, who will be followed by Nora Gallegos.
Thank you. I, too, am a homeowner on Hampton Avenue. In 1983, the alley was closed due to a variety of problems. It's been closed for 34 years. We're asking as homeowners for a peace of mind and for security. It currently attracts vandalism. It's a fire hazard. It's a place to camp, to hide, to explore, to do drugs. It's not sustainable. It's a wasteland. It's a waste of space. We would ask for the utilization and the land be given back to the homeowners. Originally, it did belong to the homeowners, and then the city took possession of it, and it became closed. We would ask for possession of it. We could make it sustainable. It would give us that peace of mind we're looking for. It has 87% of the homeowners' support. It also has the support of the school that's adjacent. So with all of those considerations, we ask for your support in giving the land to the homeowners and vacating the alley and having it something that can be used and something that is sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Nora Gallegos, followed by Logan Darling.
Thank you for letting me speak. I am a homeowner on Hampton Avenue. My property abuts the alley, and our property does not have any access to our garage except for through the alley. So if we lose the access to our garage, our property loses value, for one thing, and we don't have any way to access the backyard if we were to need to remove a tree or do work on, we have an old, sorry, a septic tank, I believe, in the ground that needs to be removed, and we wouldn't have a way to access that. And also, there are a lot of cars that park along the road in front of our house from the school and from other properties that have more than one car, and we're just worried we won't be able to park sometimes. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gallegos, let me ask you, who is covering alleys tonight in Brian's absence? That Nick? I'm going to have you talk to a staff member and see if he can help you work with some ways if this gets closed for you to be able to retain some access, okay? I can't promise, but we'll see what we can look into. Nick, raise your hand again. Okay, he'll meet you in the hall. Thank you. And Logan Darling, and if there's anyone else who'd like to speak to this, please feel free to fill out a card, and we'd love to hear from you.
Logan Darling. I started this alley vacation process 3 years ago when I moved into the neighborhood. Since I've been there, the alley's been closed the whole time. It's grown over with trees. You can't even get a car down it. It clearly hasn't been used. It's just kind of a negative draw in the neighborhood, and I think be much better used, be incorporated back in the neighborhood so people can actually use the property and use the land instead of just having to be an overgrown wasteland. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Christian Harrison.
Good evening. I wasn't planning on speaking to this issue, but I wanted to bring to the group's attention that there's a certain irony that we're talking about ADU units later down the list, and we're talking about vacating an alleyway. As you all are aware, alleyways play a crucial role in the ecosystem of a vibrant and dense city. They allow us to have rear access to the properties. They allow us to remove driveways from the front of the buildings, making the streets safer for pedestrians. They give us additional access, for example, to the classic ADU, which is the apartment above the garage. I can't speak to the specific vacating of the alleyway, but the folks that are talking about it, from what I've heard, are talking about how it's not been maintained. And so perhaps looking to maintaining the alleyway rather than vacating it would be a solution. Our city needs density, and our city needs a healthy network. But over time, we continue to cut ourselves off at the knees by vacating our alleyways. And that's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on vacation of this alleyway? Not seeing anyone. I'll look for a motion to close the hearing.
Madam Chair, I move that we close this public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Is there a second? Second. Motion by Council Member Mendenhall, seconded by Council Member Penfold. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much. We are now to public hearing B3. This is an ordinance amending the zoning map pertaining to one parcel located at approximately 603 South, 600 East to rezone the parcel from RMF 30 low density multifamily residential to RMU 35 residential mixed use. And if there is anyone who'd like to speak, fill out a card. I have one card from Khosrow Semnani. Mr. Semnani, would you come forward? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Khosrow Semnani. This is in regard to item number 3 for rezoning. I appreciate your time and attendance to this issue. This matter has been before the Neighborhood City Council already and has been before the Planning and Zoning as well. As you know, we appreciate if you take action on this item, as we are very much interested to get started and pursue other matters with regard to this project as a part of a larger project. Some of you, maybe all of you, are familiar with that project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this matter?
Madam Chair?
No one? Yes.
I move that the council close the public hearing, suspend the rules, and adopt an ordinance amending the zoning map pertaining to one parcel located at approximately 603 South, 600 East Street to rezone the parcel from RMF 30, low-density multifamily residential, to RMU 35, residential mixed-use district.
Second.
There is a motion by, I almost said board member, you can tell what I'm used to thinking, by Council Member Luke, seconded by Council Member Rogers. Is there any discussion?
I would like to say it was me, but it was Derek Kitchen that said that.
Okay. Let's correct that. Council Member Kitchen, you were so soft-spoken, I thought it was from way down there. All right. Is there any discussion about closing the public hearing and voting on this tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much. I've got to turn my pages. Next public hearing is B4 regarding an ordinance amending Salt Lake City Code pertaining to signage at the sports arena located on the block between South Temple and 100 South Streets, 300 and 400 West, commonly known as the Vivint Smart Home Arena. Unless you're my age, and then it's still the Delta Center. And we will have a public hearing on this, and those who wish to speak, fill out a card, same drill as before. We'll begin with Christian Harrison, and he will be followed by James Berenson. Mr. Harrison? Okay. Give him a chance if he comes back. James Berenson. All right, Wade Budge.
Madam Chair, council members, thank you. My name is Wade Budge, representing the Larry H. Miller Arena Corporation, who has made this application or made this request for a rezone. I know that you've received a lot of the details already in your work session. just wanted to touch on a few highlights about this request and also thank the staff for their work on this request as well. We've worked well with them throughout the summer to bring this to you today. As you're all aware, we're undergoing a very significant remodel of the Delta Center, or now Vivint Smart Home Arena. And as part of that, we are upgrading or attempting to upgrade the signage outside of the facility. As we know, it's a $125 million upgrade that we're involved with, and as part of that, we wanted to make the facility be similar to other facilities that you see in other arenas throughout the country. We were happy to see that Salt Lake City already has an overlay zone process which allows for customization of signage for particular city blocks. And so we availed ourselves of that in making this application. And so if this were to be approved tonight, what this would allow is a couple of things. One, it would allow for us to have video monitors above the entryways into the arena. We think that's important for purposes of adding to the fan experience. Also will allow for better utilization of the plaza on those events that were in the playoffs and other events where there are significant people out on the plazas. We're also, as part of this arena remodel, we have created more fan interactive space, and as a result, we had to move office space out of the arena, and we moved it to the practice facility over on 13th South and 5th West, and that's the second part of our request. And that request is that we also have a very small overlay zone created just for that one particular property for one particular additional sign. And that's at the end of your packet, and that's a request to have a sign that would be a little bit smaller than a billboard, but would allow,
Time.
Okay.
You can finish your thought.
Okay, I'll finish my thought. But what the sign would allow is for us to advertise uses related to the arena, as well as this very fantastic brand new class, top of class practice facility that is being located within our city. Happy to entertain any questions.
We don't ask you questions
Thank you
here,
much.
but we can contact you. Thank you very much. And Christian Harrison, do you wish to speak to this? Okay. And James Berenson, would you like to speak to this?
Who is going to be paying for this Vivint Arena? That's what I'd like to know. Are you going to lay it on the taxpayers again? Or, I mean, the Millers, they got how many car lots in how many states? I don't understand this. Why do the taxpayers have to tax everything? I've heard of no taxation without representation, but obviously you guys don't talk to the constituents in your districts, because I have. I told them about tripling the sewage tax and what it was funded for. They said, I don't like tax increases. So I don't understand this. Why are we the people being persecuted for your grandiose plans? I don't understand that.
I'd be happy to invite you to speak to a staff member who can tell you how it's being funded.
I'm still waiting for the case that allows you to deprive us freedom of speech.
I'm happy to have heard from you tonight. Go ahead. You still have time. Go ahead.
I was told there was a case. It was decided in the federal system. And I asked the gentleman in that room down there, well, what's the name of the case? I don't know. I mean, if the police arrest you, they usually can state the state code or city code that you have broken. But you take away the freedom of speech, and the case law is I don't know. That makes no sense. I wanted to investigate this, but that was on what? Back in July, and I'm still waiting for the name of that case that allows you to take our freedom of speech. So talking to your cronies, minions, whatever they are, it doesn't do any good.
Thank you, Mr. Berenson. We appreciate your being here, and happy to have someone talk to you about how the funding happens not through taxpayers for the Utah Jazz and the Vivint Smart Home Arena. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the signage? All right, then this is another item, that requires council action tonight. We will suspend the rules and take action. You'll make that motion.
I move that the council close the public hearing, suspend the rules, and adopt an ordinance amending section 21A.46.110, point A, point 3, point B of the Salt Lake City Code pertaining to signage at the sports arena located on the block between South Temple and 100 South Streets and 300 and 400 West Streets.
Second.
And did you move to close the public hearing?
Yes.
As part of that, okay. Want to make sure I had that. All right. We good doing those together? Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, thank you. There is a motion by Councilmember Luke, a second by Councilmember Rogers this time, and now we'll have discussion.
Madam Chair, I just want a clarification, and I'm going to look to staff on this. The motion as presented only adopts the overlay zone for the arena, correct, and not for the additional property?
Yes. The Planning Commission forwarded a positive recommendation just for the Vivint block, not for the practice facility.
Perfect, thank you.
Further discussion on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we are at our fifth public hearing, item B5. Note that this item includes two parts, a resolution and an ordinance. Tonight's public hearing will be only for the resolution for the foreign trade zone, and we will have a hearing on October 3rd in 2 weeks to consider an ordinance related to the consolidated fee schedule. So if you were hoping to talk about the fee schedule, save your thoughts and come on back. And if you would like to speak, we would welcome you to come speak to a resolution authorizing submission of an application for general purpose foreign trade zone number 30 to the foreign trade zone boards to create the service area under the alternative site framework. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this? And I will say this while I'm waiting to see if there's anyone across the hall. If you speak, I've been told that people across the hall are not able to hear, so really make sure you've got that mic right there like a rock star, okay? All right, seeing no one, I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council closes public hearing and defer action to a later date.
Second.
There is a motion by Councilmember Mendenhall, a second by Councilmember Kitchen. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Item B6 is our next public hearing. We saved all the public hearings for tonight, I think. This is a resolution allocating the city's capital improvement program for fiscal year 2017-18. And is there anyone who wishes to speak to this? We will begin with George Chapman, followed by Heather Newell. Mr. Chapman.
Forgive me, my brain's a little fried. This is CIP, right?
Yes, sir.
All those pages. Okay, first of all, I want more. I want more out of my city. I want more as a taxpayer. And a couple of years ago, we redid Miller Park against the better wishes and more educated opinions. And you know what happened, Charlie. It's been destroyed, essentially. So the CIP funding that you have in there recommended for Miller Park is necessary, but you need a lot more because it really is going to get worse. If we have another rainstorm like we did last Friday or in July, you're going to have landslides of homes coming down into Miller Park. It's that bad. So I think we do need the funding for Miller Park, but we also need the funding for the streets. Wherever a bus stops, you have a pothole, and that discourages biking. Aaron, if you really care about biking, you should be caring about making sure the streets are bikeable, and they're not where a bus stops, and that's a big issue. So there are a lot of streets in the CIP that need taken care of, but we don't have the funding for them, and it doesn't make sense. I think we need funding for that. I don't know how to get it, but I support the CIP budget, but I just want more streets. And James, Andrew's not here to support some of the Poplar Grove stuff, but there are two streets that I know people in Poplar Grove and Glendale have been trying to get paved for years, and it starts into this west side gets nothing and east side gets plenty. So why isn't the west side street, why aren't the west side streets getting paved? So heads up, I know you're trying, but I want more as a taxpayer.
Thank you very much. And you reminded me, I failed to acknowledge that we've excused Andrew Johnston, who could not be with us tonight. Heather Newell, followed by Courtney Reeser.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Heather Newell. I'm the principal at Backman Elementary, and I am here to solicit your support for the Bridge to Backman project. Wanted to let you know that when we initially started this process, it was suggested that we get outside donors to help support this, and we were able to get a $10,000 donation from the Tony Finau Foundation. So Tony Finau is a professional golfer, and he actually went to Backman Elementary and would have used this bridge to get to school. So he was about 15 years too late. The thing that's most important about this project is that it's kind of the seed for everything that we're doing in terms of bringing our community together. And we feel like it's really important at a time where our community is feeling marginalized and disenfranchised by a lot of things that are going on. And it is something that we can really rally around and breathes life into our neighborhood. It supports our science program, our community collaboration, student and family engagement, STEAM education, supports our College Bound program, and our garden project. So we've got about 11 partners, and it's kind of the, if you build it, they will come. People want to be a part of this, and it's creating a lot of excitement, and it would mean a lot to our community. So we're asking that you fully fund this project. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Courtney Reeser, followed by Jim Webster.
Hi, my name is Courtney Reeser. On behalf of the Rose Park Community Council, we would like to say thank you for funding the 6th North, 8th West pedestrian improvements for safety. We were very grateful that that happened, and we look forward to other traffic calming measures that are going to be along 6th North and all the way down to Redwood Road. We are hoping to continue that improvement. So thank you again. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Jim Webster, followed by Karina Lugo.
I'm Jim Webster. I'm a landscape architect, and I was the designer of the Miller Park iteration in 1978. I assume you've seen the photographs, is that correct, of the flooding that took place? This is really has become a little bit more complicated. There's about 4 or 5 components to this issue of upgrading Miller Park. Number one is going back to the oil spill when it was suggested by Mayor Becker that we should be doing something in Miller Park. I don't personally think it really needed anything, but instead the city and Parks Department decided to relocate and realign the pathways and did a number of other things, ultimately which were detrimental to the WPA walls, which is, of course, Work Progress Administration. Those walls are on the National Register of Historic Places, along with Preservation Utah, Utah Heritage Foundation. A lot of other people are very interested in making sure that those walls are sustained. The recent floods have created a situation where they've been undercut pretty significantly. And other considerations have to do with the ADA trail, which, of course, Christine Passy, who's no longer with the city, as I understand, but she supported that idea that if we were to take the pathway along the Diestel side and realign it down to the creek with an ADA compliant path, which has never been the case before, and then put in a footbridge, we could perpetuate that path along the military side, on the creek side, and then abandon all pathways and other infrastructure in the area that is so vulnerable because of the recent flooding and has always been a problem. I'd like to make sure you understand that we had a petition signed in 2013 by the neighborhood that wanted the pathways down by the creek. So all we're really doing is reiterating that. When the CIP proposal was submitted, we submitted another proposal. So, you know, I solicit your consideration of this. I think it's a worthy project. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
I just, regarding the issue of Miller Park, not necessarily this CIP application. I do just want to state publicly that Public Utilities is currently working on a remediation issue for some of the flooding that has taken place. That RFP, I believe, goes out tomorrow. And during our work session today, I requested that the WPA walls and any other structure that has been impacted by those two flooding events related to if it's related to the culvert issue, be included in that project. So hopefully some of what Mr. Webster has talked about, if it's related to the flooding issues, Public Utilities will be addressing it, and then we'll, as a council, will be talking about this specific proposal as we move forward with our CIP.
Thank you, Councilmember Luke. Karina Lugo, followed by Robert Arganbright.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Karina Lugo, and I am also part of the Backman Elementary staff. I'm obviously here to ask for support for our bridge, and I'm very emotional. This is happy. This is happiness. I know that's not what it sounds like, but it is. So I'm here to ask for your support in funding a bridge. This is a bridge that will help our neighborhood in Rose Park. So as a young girl that lived in Rose Park and grew in Rose Park since the age of 14, I realized that the Jordan River for us was a nasty place. It was an ugly place. It was where dead bodies floated up, or batteries, or the homeless that would get into fights would throw their grocery carts into to be mean to each other. Once upon a time, 3 years ago, Heather and I decided that we needed to improve the attendance at the school that we were assigned to turn it around. The school was not in good condition inside or outside as a community or as a schoolhouse. And we have done so. In 3 years, going into our 4th year, we have changed so much for the community. And we're asking for your support so that we can continue to do that. Now, it's not for us. We're in an age group where we are moving along, but it is for the children. We currently have 460 bosses who are counting on you. They know that we're here. They have seen drawings of the bridge. They've seen Tony Finau come and say, we want this for you. They know that when Miss Karina leaves the building, she's working to get a bridge. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's really doing a lot of the legwork that we've done. So really, part of what we're asking for is the opportunity to show this neighborhood that we do care. And when we say we say everyone, because one of the ideas in the neighborhood is that other people don't care about us in Rose Park. The West Side has never developed the way that it needs to be with access and opportunities for our children. These are children that we hope, with the career paths that we are providing for them, will be in your seats one day. So with a bridge that will provide access to school and safety and opportunities for science, we'd like for you all to really consider funding our bridge for the children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert Arganbright. And if there's anyone else who would like to speak on capital improvement projects, please fill out a card. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. This also pertains to Miller Park. I'm opposed to the project. The project actually goes back toward the end of the renovation project, Miller Park renovation, when the city proposed to put a relatively short section of trail where it is today up near the stone wall. The city proposed to do that because it was the cheapest way to go. It could be paid for by the settlement, the Chevron settlement. To move the trail where some of the neighbors wanted to move, it would cost $200,000 more, which is why I opposed it then and why actually the neighborhood council opposed it. The neighbors said that it would cause a crime wave in the area. The community council, neighborhood council brought in the police chief to refute that. Now it's back again. The idea to move this trail down away from, I think, 3 properties. It has nothing to do with the recent damage. The project was put together long before that. It'll do nothing for the sustainability of the park. The issue of ADA accessibility is moot because the trail that leads there all the way from the church property down on the west end is not ADA accessible. It's dangerous for people suffering with disabilities to go down that trail. It's far from compliant. It would cost, I would guess, well over $1 million to fix it, if it's even possible, because the grade is so steep and the trail is so narrow. So that's out. The question of the wall is actually the section of wall behind Mr. Webster's house. That wall is fine. The trail has been packed down now and it supports the wall. Before the trail was in, it was steep and it was bare and it was eroding very rapidly. The other issue that came up in the application is about the safety of this section of the trail in the winter. That whole trail, all the way from one end to the other in the winter on that side, the Military Drive side, is covered with ice. That one section that is being considered being moved actually has stairs and a hand railing. It's the safest section. So why would you start with the safest section?
Thank you very much, Mr. Arkenbright. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the City Council tonight about capital improvement projects? Come forward and we'll have you fill out a card.
Thank you. I'm Michael, Chair of the Central City Neighborhood Council. One of our projects spurred by a subcommittee on our council is in this omnibus, and it's the Artesian Well Park. The park is on 8th South and 5th East and has been, frankly, in a state of disrepair as long as I can remember it. But even if it were in great shape, the design is not very friendly to the neighborhood. There are high brick walls. People often sleep behind the walls. There's no drainage for the water. The well is the main attraction, but we've had people, I asked people what they think about the park, and some people don't even realize it's intended to be a park, and that's what the grass and the trees are there for. So that is included in the CIP, and I encourage you to please consider voting yes on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no additional cards, but if there's anyone else, will you fill out a card too, please? Thank you so much. If there's anyone else who would like to speak to us, do that. And I'd also say at this point, if there's anyone in the overflow, we now have sufficient seating in our chambers that you're welcome to join us in here unless you're just really comfortable over there. Then I will look for a motion. See no one else to speak. Yes.
I move that the council close the public hearing.
Second.
There is a motion by Councilmember Mendenhall, second by Councilmember Luke. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We're now on to our 7th public hearing, and I think we're getting close to a record. And this is regarding an ordinance adopting the Transit Master Plan, which evaluates the city's travel patterns and transit needs and makes recommendations about transit service, infrastructure, support investments, and policies for the next 20 years. And I have cards for that, and if you would like to speak, be sure and fill out a card and give them to one of our staff members, and we'd love to hear from you. We will begin with Amy Wildermuth or Myron Wilson, whichever of you would like to speak. I'm betting this is Myron.
Thank you. My name is Myron Wilson. I'm the Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer at the University of Utah, and here to represent the university tonight. We realize we have had challenges with our administrative structure in terms of doing some planning and some community relations in the past, but our office, the Sustainability Office, and many other institutions on campus have come together to create a sustainability action plan to integrate and to address many issues, transportation included. The group includes representatives from Research Park, Auxiliary and Commuter Services, Campus Planning, and the Chief Design and Construction Officer, planning faculty, as well as our office. So it's really, really well-rounded, and it includes our links to top administration. We are also working with external advisory groups, Salt Lake City Transportation, UDOT, UTA, and others. We have some general comments. We are really excited about the draft plan. We want to commend you. It's really excellent work. We support it and are pleased to see the inclusion of frequent transit networks, modal variety and diversity, transit corridors, supportive land use, and particularly additional hubs to support improved north-south and east-west access. We want to become a consistent and strong partner with the city and others for all planning efforts and moving forward in this initiative. So we're here, want to let you know that we will be transforming campus in substantive ways. A lot of new housing will be on campus. and we're ready to commit substantial resources and planning expertise to the goal of reducing overall single occupant use. I don't know if you're aware, but more than 30%, 35% of our campus comes to campus on something other than a regular automobile. Our goal is to get to 50% by 2025. And so our number one priority is a multimodal transit facility and many other areas. So thank you. We'll be submitting some formal comments.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your being here. George Chapman, followed by Douglas Cotant.
Madam Chair, may I have a moment of personal privilege while George comes up? I want to thank Myron on behalf of the University of Utah for coming out and speaking tonight. I've complained many times about the lack of conversation between the city and the universities with regard to transit planning, and it's welcome to hear from you all tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman.
You know what I think about the transit plan also, but let me go into more detail. The Transit Master Plan is not financially constrained, and before you adopt any plan, you should make sure you can pay for what you put into it. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the most expensive project being pushed, and that'll hurt the existing bus service like it did with the rail system. So my concern is you have a lot of projects still in here, even though you're focusing on the frequent transit network, which is a good idea. These projects could conceivably be pushed without the vote of the public, but it obligates the public for each of the rail projects $100 million. We don't have that money. That's $50 million local for each of the streetcars, downtown streetcars, which essentially puts a mass transit system every block downtown. It doesn't make sense. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the streetcars. I'm concerned about the two costly layover bus terminals. I'm concerned that you're saying or assuming people will walk 2 blocks. If you ride transit like I do, people will not walk a block. That's how bad it is. So 2 blocks don't work, and 4 blocks for a BRT won't work even more. So I also need to focus on an experiment that UDOT is performing on Redwood Road Bus 217 to try to get it on schedule, and that's called an alternative bus that changes the light signal priority for the bus if there are enough passengers on the bus. That's not in here. It should be in here. And I have a problem with anybody saying they want to reduce single occupancy vehicle use because cars make our families and our economy more efficient and our country more efficient. And if you have a family, you're going to end up with a kid's dog and people in a car. So I'm concerned the taxpayers are not being represented in the University of Utah's discussion and not being represented in this Transit Master Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Douglas Cotant, followed by Christian Harrison.
So I guess this Transit Master Plan includes more buses, more bus service and more track service. I'm in favor of it. And one thing I wish Utah Transit Authority would do is do something to make to help the passengers safe, because I have had problems where I have actually fallen on the trains. And one time I was carrying 4 bags of groceries, and I was about to get off the train, and I wound up on the pavement. And I think for right now, Utah Transit Authority does not care about passenger safety, and maybe they should include that in this Transit Master Plan. And so I thank you for allowing me to speak on this.
Thank you very much. Christian Harrison, followed by Courtney Reeser.
You really did put all the most interesting topics on tonight. I'm coming here in capacity, at least in part, as a board member for the Utah Transit Riders Union. We're very excited about the transit plan. We're happy to see that it's finally moved out of whatever limbo space it was in for the last year, and that it's coming before you. We're excited for many of the innovations that we see. We're especially encouraged by the commitment to a high-frequency network bus system. We are concerned a little bit, though, about the inclusion of so many of the rail projects, not because rail is bad, but it's going to be a matter of prioritization. I don't always echo George's comments, but I think that there will be a temptation to jump at the projects first, and rail is very sexy. But as you are well aware, as the state has built out its rail network over the last 10, 15 years, we've gutted bus services, 30%. And we have to restore bus service to our communities. And the high frequency network is the way to do that, but it has to be the priority. The other part of the conversation that we are a little concerned about, I am personally concerned about, is the funding mechanism. I know there's some conversation about bonding versus the TUF, the utility fees. I would strongly speak in support of the utility fees, allowing us to reach a broader spectrum of funding support. And also, this is infrastructure, and we shouldn't be funding infrastructure through a recurring bonding process. We need something that has legs and that has some longitudinal power in it. And I think that the fee structure is our opportunity there. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Perfect timing. Courtney Reeser, followed by James Berenson.
Yes, my name is Courtney Reeser, and I am the current vice chair for the Transportation Advisory Board. We recommend that you adopt the draft plan of the Transportation Master Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berenson. And this is my last card. If there's someone else who wishes to speak to the Transit Master Plan, please fill out a card. We'd like to hear from you.
I came in here down in 2011. I took care of my grandmother for the last 4 years of her life. You guys, maybe not you guys, but Mr. Becker, he's a POS in my opinion. I think he even overtook Mayor Biskupski overtook him as a king POS. Anyway, they made bike lanes in front of her house. You could not park in front of her house, so her friends could no longer come and visit her because either they would have to park on the east side of the street or park in the driveway. 80-year-olds in cars do not mix. I'm an 80-year-old trying to back across the street, that's not a good idea. An 80-year-old trying to cross a busy street is not a good idea. I talked to Mayor Biskupski's cronies when she was out campaigning, and they said, oh yeah, we're gonna get this addressed. That one lady with the dirty blonde hair that runs around always promising things but never showing up, they told me that they were gonna remove these, because I asked them. Homeowners pay property tax every year. Car owners pay taxes every year. The bicyclists pay tax once a year, or once when they buy their bicycle. Other than that, I mean, I don't understand why you're depriving property owners of being able to park in front of their own homes. You give the right of way to bicyclists that, I don't know how many of you guys actually been outside and watched these things. Bicycles blow through stop signs. And it's really funny that if they blow through a stop sign and hit you, the cops give the driver of the car the ticket because the bicycle ran through the stop sign. I don't understand this honestly, and I thought maybe there were other streets they could have done the bike lane on that weren't as congested as the street she lived on, but I seriously blame Becker for expediting my grandma's departure, because after her friends couldn't come over anymore, it's just like she lost and gave up. So thank you, if you were part of that, for helping expedite my grandma to her next phase in life. That hurts very bad. I did the best I could to take care of her, and yet I have other people deciding what's best for her. deprive her of her friends in her elder years.
Thank you for taking care of your grandmother, and thank you for speaking to us. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to us about the Transit Master Plan? Then I will look for a motion to.
Madam Chair, I move that we
Yes.
close this public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we don't want to. We have another hearing set for October 3rd.
Do we need to close or do we need to continue? We've got another one scheduled, but I believe we noticed it as a separate hearing, but I could do either.
You want to give me some?
I think because you've noticed it as a separate hearing, it's fine to close this
Okay,
one.
so we'll close this one. Okay. Motion to close the public hearing for action to a later date. Is there a second?
Yeah, I second.
Motion by Councilmember Penfold, seconded by Councilmember Rogers. Is there any discussion? If none of you have any discussion, I do. I would like to encourage my colleagues that before we adopt the Transit Master Plan, that we look closely at adding the recommendation that there be bus service to the zoo, and this is the place. Right now, it stops at Research Park, and that leaves people who don't have a way to get there with no way to get there. And I think we're missing an opportunity to have transportation to that part of our city. So I'd love to see that added, just throwing that in. And with that, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much. We are now on to item B8, and this is our first public hearing on accessory dwelling units. We could be dwelling on them for some time, who knows? After tonight, a second public hearing will be held on October 3rd, and if you want more information about ADU discussions, including our straw polls, please check back with the council's agenda paperwork, and you can have that. So we will now have discussion about an ordinance that would amend the city's accessory dwelling unit, or ADU, regulations. And I have cards, and if you want to speak to this, please get a card and fill it out. We'll hear from you. We'll begin tonight with Amir Cornell. I know this is near and dear to his home, and then go to Tony Poole. Mr. Cornell. See if he's not in the, maybe he's in the other room. Okay, if he comes in, we'll do it. Tony Poole, followed by Kim Peterson.
Thank you for your service to the community. I'm a retired disabled veteran of 2 military services. And throughout my life, I've realized that service is the key to my happiness, and I think it's the key to everyone's happiness. And that being said, I started Shoebox Homes to address the J1 visa issue, and then realized that the issue of housing within our own community was more important, and so we shifted gears. I'm here to talk about some of the issues that I've heard. I went and listened to you all speak and discuss things this afternoon, and I've heard everybody talking here. Housing seems to be an issue. At Shoebox Homes, we make homes out of shipping containers. The footprint is considerably smaller, and the cost of doing a shoebox home, a container home, is considerably less than a stick home, and it's more safe. They won't catch on fire, so insurances are a lot less expensive as well. So they're energy efficient, and like I say, their footprint is considerably smaller than a stick home, and they are also made out of recycled products. The containers themselves are recycled, but all of the components, the doors, the windows, the flooring, is all recycled. And so I look forward for the opportunity to address each one of you individually at a later time. I just wanted you to see my face, so when you hear my name, Tony Poole Shoebox, you'll know who I am and what I want to talk to you about later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Poole. Kim Peterson, followed by Dennis Ayer, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Kim Peterson. I'm the chairman of the East Bench Community Council. I noticed if you go to Open City Hall and look at the survey question regarding the ADUs, it asks if you're in favor of an ordinance that would increase the availability of mother-in-law apartments. And to me, that just seems like quite a biased, oversimplified question to the topic because, well, for example, if the question, rather than asking about mother-in-law apartments, and I suppose that could be argued. I mean, unfortunately, my mother-in-law's not that bad, but anyway, if the question, rather than asking about mother-in-law apartments, said, would you be in favor of changing all single-family zoning in Salt Lake City to multifamily zoning, which is essentially what the ADU ordinance does? I think most people's gut reaction would be completely different than if you say, would you like to have more mother-in-law apartments? So I think that whole question is a little bit misleading and maybe biased. I think, well, that leads me to the main problem I have with the ADU ordinance is that it essentially does change single-family to multifamily zoning. I think, and to me, this isn't an east side versus west side or a north-south or anything question. I think this, to me, is a citywide question. I think if most homeowners were asked throughout the city, do you want your zoning changed to multifamily? I guess most people would say no. It just doesn't seem to me like it's a good idea. I don't think the long-term potential impact has really been thought through. I'm really concerned about it. Another thing that maybe could be considered rather than ADU ordinance that basically changes the zoning might be to look at it through a property by property variance process. I don't know, that might get a little too complicated, but I'm concerned about this blanket change from single family to multifamily. And is that me?
Time,
my
yes.
time up? The last thought was, I know one of the arguments for the city is that this is somehow going to create more affordable housing, but it hasn't been explained to me yet how that would work. It seems to me like anybody that builds an ADU on their property is going to try to rent that parcel for the most they can possibly get, and it just doesn't seem to me that it's going to solve the problem of affordable housing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Dennis Eyre, followed by Brandon Dayton.
You were probably hoping it was past my bedtime, weren't you?
Happy to hear from you always.
Well, I'm sure you all know this is a big deal, and I mean a really big deal for the city. And I hope that you'll recognize that I think some extraordinary things need to be done because it is such a big deal. First thing I'd like to touch on is I think that the mechanisms that the city is using to communicating with the public and the property owners has failed, totally failed. I'll give you some examples. Over the last few months, whenever I'm with people, I say, what do you think about ADUs? 9 out of 10 say, what do you mean? What are they? Never heard of them. And so I'll tell them about, well, this is what it is. If you're interested, if you're for it, or if you're opposed to it, you need to attend public hearings and Open City Hall. Put your comments down. Open City Hall, what's that? Never heard of it, never used it. So I think when this thing is as important as it is and affects as many people as it does, property owners, that I think the city needs to actually mail something to every property owner of a single-family dwelling. I think while you may not be legally responsible for doing that, I think you have a moral obligation to do it. My second topic will be this hearing tonight. We had people ready to come to talk to you and give their views. Unfortunately, you guys voted on changing the document that had been approved by the city's planning commission, and substantially so. And we kept telling them, it's coming, it's coming. Well, 2 or 3 days ago, we said, they're not going to put it out on the web so that we know what we're supposed to come talk about. So the people said, hey, why waste our time coming tonight? We don't have the document. As I understand it, was only made available like hours before this meeting tonight. I think that's unacceptable. I think the city can do better than that for an open process and dealing with the public. So I think what you need to do is you need to take a look at that process and see if there's more things you can do to communicate with the public, such as mailing something to them. Because it's very important to every property owner out there that has invested their savings and so forth to buy homes and are currently zoned as a single-family dwelling. The last thing I will comment on. Time. Okay. The last thing I'll comment on is that I hope that when it comes down to looking at this and voting on it, that you do three things. One, there are some fatal flaws in the document you've put together, and we have given our views to some of the staff at the city.
I hate to cut you off, but do you want to send it to us in writing, your 3 points?
Take 30 seconds.
No, you don't get 30 seconds. Sorry, you can have 5.
Okay, 5 seconds. I urge you to do one. When it comes down to vote, you vote the way the constituents in your district want you to vote. But I also ask you to respect the views of other people in different districts. I hope you have in you to look the other way and vote what you think is right for everybody in the city.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayer. Brandon Dayton, followed by Phil Carroll.
All right. I am here on behalf of the Rose Park Community Council tonight, and we've drafted more of a formal letter that we will be sending to you guys. Hopefully you'll be seeing that soon in support of the ADU amendment. I just want to echo what this gentleman said real quickly. I think communication could have been better on this issue. As I was looking through the staff report on the ADU process, there was no outreach done to any of the West Side communities on this process. It was only kind of by chance that I even found the staff report and knew about the issue, which has made it much more difficult for us to do outreach to our community, to get their thoughts on it, and to correctly represent what they feel. So that being said, we do feel like this is the right policy for our community and citywide. We're definitely concerned about housing, and we believe that ADUs and other mechanisms of incremental growth are the most sensible way to address our need for more affordable housing in our city. But we also believe that for the policy to work, it needs to be applied more broadly, and that means without certain limitations, and without arbitrary boundaries. The limit to 25 permits a year and an off-street parking requirement renders the policy almost completely useless to most people that want to have an ADU. So we support the amendment, but we ask for a broader, more robust, and more widely applied version of this policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Phil Carroll, followed by Dave Alderman.
Good evening. I have spent the last more than 30 years doing affordable housing day in and day out. ADUs are not affordable housing. They're housing for sure, but they're not affordable. As the previous gentleman said, they will be market rate units, and they will be whatever the landlord can get for those properties. The other issue, among the issues, are parking. In the neighborhood I live in, Lower Avenues, we do not have any more parking. If there's not off-street parking, and if you allow even the tandem parking, it simply doesn't work. Tandem parking doesn't work. It'll stress our neighborhood and make it a less livable place. We have a long history of enforcement by complaint in the city, and when you have an issue, you have to make a complaint. There's no compliance enforcement in the city unless you complain. As another gentleman said, this is across the board changing the zone from R1 to R2, and I think every property owner should have a written notice that this is going on, and that's not happening. In my Avenues neighborhood, it is more than a generation ago. It took more than a generation to recover from failed land use policies from the 50s and 60s. And now we're going in the opposite direction. Many of us have, over the last 30 years, have invested in our properties, have transformed our neighborhood, where tour buses even come through to see our community. This is going in the wrong direction. We appreciate the fact that we need more housing, but this is not the proper vehicle. It puts our historic and our neighborhoods, especially in the Avenues and Capitol Hill neighborhoods, at risk.
Time.
I appreciate the opportunity to make these comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Dave Alderman, followed by Sidney Fonsbeck.
Good evening. My name is Dave Alderman, and I'm here to support the ADU ordinance as originally proposed by the planning staff and approved by the Planning Commission because I haven't seen what the council actually voted on. And this policy changes would incrementally expand the current policy and allow ADUs only into those areas where they were wanted. We've heard a lot about the need for more housing units, and we haven't heard much yet about maintaining existing neighborhoods. And the concern about neighborhood characteristics often gets reframed as maintaining the character of single-family housing. But residents' concerns are more often about poor maintenance of housing by absentee landlords, loss of light and privacy due to large second-floor detached units, and the impact of street parking, especially if garages are converted, there's a net loss of parking spaces. While there is a need for more housing units, we must remember why people want to live in these neighborhoods in the first place. I strongly support keeping the owner-occupied requirements, which I think will help lessen impact on the neighbors. And even though the proposed policy allows it, I'd also like to see a moratorium on tear down and rebuild of larger detached accessory units that will impact neighbors' light and privacy. I live in the Avenues, where we already achieve one of the primary goals of the staff report of having a neighborhood with a mix of housing types, densities, and costs so that people of various economic groups can coexist. But it wasn't so long ago that the Avenues had many chopped up houses with multiple rentals, many in poor repair, and little or no enforcement of any landlord requirements. It was well known as a not very nice place to live. Over time, with a master plan and zoning regulations, the area has been improved and is now seen as a good place to live. Other neighborhoods have similar stories. I'd like to keep those regulations in place that help make these improvements. Before changing something that is working, we should make sure there aren't unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sydney Fonsbeck, followed by Monica Strong.
I hope that you will excuse me, but this is a very personal issue for me. I have 40 years of experience of dealing with this problem in Salt Lake City. I've gone to school on the issue. I've worked with zoning off and on all of my life, even when I was an English teacher at Cottonwood High School. And to be told that I now have 2 minutes to summarize 40 years of experience is a little overwhelming. As the first gentleman said, what you are doing is one of the most important decisions that you will make on this city council or as mayor or anything else you do. When the first council came into existence, we were made up of neighborhood people, not developers, not renters, managers. We were neighborhood people. And one of the first things we set out to do was to stabilize neighborhoods in this area, urban neighborhoods. And in case you're unaware, a lot of cities have not ever been able to accomplish that. The neighborhoods around cities, you can't walk into them. Don't go out of a certain perimeter, especially at night or if you're alone. And so we have presented that to you as a gift. We are the envy of almost every city our size and larger in the United States because we are surrounded by stable neighborhoods. They're certainly not perfect, and a lot has to be done, and that first council worked really hard on the west side to get them the services they deserved. But the Avenues was in terrible condition. Capitol Hill was a big slum waiting to be torn down. And walk up there now and see what you've got. And when we downzoned neighborhood by neighborhood. The idea of taking the entire city and applying one zone was absolutely ridiculous, and it's offensive to those of us who know what the process is supposed to be. Where's your traffic study? Where's your infrastructure study? What are you going to do with the sewers that were built for single-family neighbors, and suddenly you've got double the people that it was built for? I think if you're going to do this, at least be honest and say that you are changing the character of Salt Lake City to a transient city full of transient neighborhoods, because that's what you're doing. Please
I need to have you wrap up,
this-
please.
Please take this. Excuse me, but shut your mouth. Please take this seriously. Get your studies, get your reports, and then be honest about
Fonsbeck,
what
I
you're
need to
doing
ask you to
and
please wrap it
why
up.
you're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Monica Strong, followed by Nigel Swaby.
Hi. I just want to say I moved here from California about 30 years ago. I love my city. I love Salt Lake. I love my annual street pickup. Thank you so much for that. I love the big trees that enhance the character of my neighborhood. I do, however, feel that a change towards a more condensed community living situation will have negative implications. My neighborhood already has tenants that park on the street. I think it's because we have an aging community in my neighborhood, and we have adult children that have gone to college and for some reason aren't living on their own yet. So we already have tenants. We have roommates in our neighborhoods that park on the street, and it does affect snow removal. It affects the street sweepers that come and can't sweep my part of the street because there's cars parked on it. Anyway, I would just urge you to retain my neighborhood as a single-family home neighborhood, and if for some reason the decision does lean to allowing the ADUs, ADUs, I would hope that you would make on-site parking mandatory. 2 spots probably for the accessory units. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Strong. Nigel Swaby, followed by Tamara Todd.
Good evening. Thank you for holding this. My name is Nigel Swaby. I am a real estate agent, and I live in Fair Park, which is on the west side of town. I am in support of the accessory dwelling units. We have a significant housing shortage in the valley, and allowing accessory dwelling units will increase the amount of housing stock in the area as well as the quality. I was speaking to someone the other day who had a unit, had a home that had a unit in it that he did not rent out, and he said in order to make changes to a bathroom that he had to take out the dwelling unit, which doesn't make very much sense. So we probably have some housing stock in here that with these accessory units that are not able to be upgraded. So developing a consistent policy to allow these, I believe, is a good idea. And like everybody else has mentioned, parking is definitely a concern. That's something that people have expressed concern about, and I would support making sure that that part of it is regulated.
Thank you very much. Tamara Todd, followed by Barry Moldover.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is Tamara Todd. I'd like to make a simple statement in support of accessory dwelling units and creative living. I've been a homeowner in the heart of Sugar House for the past 5 years. In my view, the overall purpose of accessory dwelling units is to enhance family and community. I am an older millennial. As I consider ADUs, I think of my family and what my parents have done. My parents were a part of middle-class America, and I am proud of them. However, despite the fact that they worked hard in respectable jobs, both myself and my husband will be financially responsible for caring for my parents and possibly his as well. How wonderful it would be to bring my family together, have an apartment with them, raising my children a little bit, helping, and bringing our family together. So I embrace an expansion of the ADU in a safe and responsible way. I don't want sewer crap going everywhere, and I clearly don't want the neighborhood to be overrun, but I think it can be done well in a manner that's sustainable. I would like clarity from the City Council on structural building codes, and I'd recommend for Salt Lake City to adapt the tiny house appendix for the 2018 IRC, which has also been adopted by Idaho. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Todd. Barry Moldover, followed by Kelly Larson.
Hi. We live in a house in the East Bench. It's an older house. It probably supported 7 people at one time. My wife and I live there. There are 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms in this house. We have children who maybe in the future would move in, or we think about downsizing, but downsizing has its own problems. It would be a perfect solution for us to be able to put another dwelling unit in our downstairs and either rent it out, or possibly one of our grown children could move in. It would enable us to keep living in that house rather than looking somewhere else. I know in our neighborhood there are a lot of aging people who are living with 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square feet, no more family about, maybe they don't even have a spouse anymore, and they really have nowhere to go. It would enable them to stay in their homes and afford to live there in the future, as well as make some alleviation of the pinched housing problem. We talked about homeless. The one way to get rid of homelessness is to provide enough homes for everybody that needs them. Thank you very much.
Kelly Larson, followed by Lynn Piersching.
Hello, thank you guys for hearing us tonight. I'd like to echo what Tamara said about, I think she has a great point with the accessory dwelling unit living with family members on the property and taking care of them. And I would also like to second what she said about expanding it to include the tiny house living. I'd like to make the point that buying houses and or renting places is maybe not the lifestyle that everybody wants. My husband and I have both bought and sold a house and rented, and it just isn't the lifestyle that we want. We like minimalistic living, and having a place where we could put our tiny house would be amazing, and we could just really simplify our lives. And there are groups on Facebook, and there's a lot of people that are for this movement, so please consider that as you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Larson. Lynn Piersching, followed by Tanya DeAngelis.
Lynn Pershing, District 6. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I do not support the recently City Council revision to expand ADU ordinance citywide. Citywide zoning is zoning for no one. One size does not fit all. The overarching language of this modified ordinance does not respond, respect, or recognize the unique aspects of various neighborhoods to minimize negative impacts on established neighborhoods. District 3 and 6 were eliminated from the proposed ADU ordinance for important reasons. The current lack of public transportation service to these areas, fire safety at the urban wildlife interface, steep slopes, narrow streets, limited on-street and on-site vehicle parking, automobile congestion, and the availability of many existing housing types already in place: duplexes, townhouses, condos, rentals, and single-family housing. Finally, concerns from East Bench residents that we heard in many community councils about merely becoming student housing for institutions of higher learning. And finally, the magnanimous change of this is the change from single-family zoning to multifamily housing zoning. Expanding the ordinance is premature. It will compound the traffic congestion we experience on the East Bench, was in direct conflict with the city's initiative to clean air, because there's no funding resolution to handle the already overburdened commuter traffic on the East Bench. Further, not all ADU types are appropriate in every neighborhood. Attached internal basements and additions may be more appropriate in historic areas than detached ADUs, but no differentiation in the current language, nor of application of use, nor design review is provided. Thus, all ADU types will be allowed without neighborhood input, to the detriment of surrounding neighbor property owners. Ironically, methods of creation, D, 3, and 5, will unintentionally increase citywide demolitions of viable, affordable housing with new construction replacement, that's suggested, that will put in more expensive homes with attached ADUs and associated increased rents for those properties.
Time.
I have one more statement, and that is this. Before we pass this ordinance, let's have an honest discussion about the value and the need for single-family housing in Salt Lake City. We are lucky, as mentioned earlier, we are one of the few, if only, mid-sized city in the United States that still offers an option of single-family housing in an urban environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tanya DeAngelis, followed by Richard Dillon.
Hello, thank you. My partner and I are homeowners in the 9th and 9th neighborhood, and we support the expansion of ADUs because they provide additional income for the homeowner. They will increase density, activate alleyways, and provide housing for aging family members. But please reconsider the height restriction for detached units to allow for taller than the main structure in line with zoning restrictions for main structures. I'd also like to address the concern about ruining single-family home neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods are already mixed with apartment complexes and duplexes alongside single-family homes due to years of minimal zoning requirements. So the concern is limited to only a few exclusive neighborhoods. I'd also like to address the concern regarding communication about ADUs. We actually did receive a mailing regarding this hearing, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Richard Dillon, followed by Michael Larice.
Thank you, Richard Dillon. I just wanted to say I heard about this hearing while traveling in Kanab, and people were talking about it down there because the issues of providing affordable and accessible housing in the city centers is not something that's unique to Salt Lake City, but in fact, all the little communities are trying to deal with the increased population growth that the state sees. Obviously, need to sustain the architectural quality as additional ADUs go in. Got to keep the neighborhoods up to standards. You got to study the traffic and make sure the mass transit's there. But you see this trend going on in other cities. And Vancouver, British Columbia, for example, is a really good example where they enhance the city by focusing on increasing mass density in their corridors and allowed them to invest more efficiently in their mass transit. You had to improve their utilities, but it made shorter runs and more efficient utilities, gave them more walkable neighborhoods because more people could get to resources. It improved their air quality, and which is an important issue here. If we can get people closer to where they work, we don't have as much, vehicle traffic during the winter. And we also just make it easier for workers to get close to their jobs and improve the quality of life. So I support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael Larice, followed by Mauricio Rosales.
I am an associate professor of urban design and city planning at the University of Utah. I direct the urban design program for the university. I happen to live in District 4. For the last 4 weeks, we've been running a graduate research studio on ADUs. 3 PhD students and 5 master's students, and the results have been remarkable and surprising. We've studied 8 cities across the United States that have ADU policies, only one of which has had a negative result, which is Boulder, Colorado. All of the rest of them have been very positive and interesting. City of Vancouver, the gentleman is right, has 25,000 ADU units in the city and has raised the value of property across the city. Almost all of these cities have started with a pilot area, and very quickly they moved to across the city allowances of ADUs. Almost all these cities have decreased the onerous requirements for the ADU because the benefits have been so positive. I'm working with Mike Malloy in Planning and Sean Murphy in HAND, Housing and Neighborhood Development, who are our partners on this project. We will be happy to work with you on your working group and to provide empirical evidence on the arguments both for and against the ADUs. One of the issues is planning jingoism and jargon. Right now, I've seen the ordinance. It's bloated, it's heavy, and it's full of non-aspirational recommendations, okay, or requirements. East Side, the avenues will jump on the wagon once they see what it does for other neighborhoods in the city. And I would encourage you, if you need to go through the pilot project to allow the rest of the city to shine, raise their property values, and provide affordable housing, and it is affordable housing. Just a couple of facts that we've learned so far. City of Portland, Oregon, an ADU unit costs $78,000 to build on average, whereas an affordable housing unit by a nonprofit organization costs $200,000 to build. That's affordable. Okay? We're happy to extend other research that we've got. We've got a lot of it so far. But the last thing I want to say is we are going to be classifying and mapping every single family residential parcel in the city of Salt Lake City, to which type of ADU unit is appropriate on that parcel, looking at what they can find, and building scenarios of 0% addition, 10% build out, 25%, and 50%. And we'll extend that research to you.
Thank you so much. Mario Rosales, followed by Christian Hansen.
Estoy a favor de construir la casita para la suegra.
He wants to build his mother-in-law's house.
I am in favor. Yes, thank you.
Tengo una pequeña historia.
I have a small story to tell.
Yo tengo mi empresa.
I have a company.
Limpio ventanas.
I clean windows and I clean carpets.
En este año,
this year,
me caí de 2 pisos.
I fell from 2-story building and I broke my leg.
Entonces no podía
So
subir
I
las
couldn't,
escaleras en
I could not go up the steps on my house.
Pero cuando yo compré esta casa
But when I
hace 2
bought this
años,
house 2 years ago,
ya tenía construido atrás una casita pequeña.
I already had a small mother-in-law dwelling in the back of the house.
Entonces pensé, tal
So I
vez,
thought maybe
cuando yo tenga 80 o 90
when
años,
I'm 80 or 90 years old,
no voy a tener las facilidades para subir las escaleras.
I would not be able to go up the steps.
Y tal vez no voy a tener el suficiente dinero para vivir.
And I will probably not have enough money to live by.
Para mí es una felicidad que hoy se toque este tema.
For me, I'm happy that we're touching on this issue
Porque tal vez puedo vivir en esa casa pequeña
because maybe I can live in that small house
y puedo
and
rentar
I can rent
la casa
the
de
big
frente.
house.
Muchas personas se preocupan por el tráfico,
A lot of people, they are worried about traffic,
pero me gustó escuchar el día de hoy
but I enjoy listening today,
a los jóvenes
the young
que querían
people
tener el amor para atender a su madre.
who wanted to have the love to attend their mothers.
Qué cosa tan maravillosa es
What a
eso.
wonderful thing is that.
Y no preocuparse por
And
el
not worry
tráfico
about
o
the
por los
traffic
problemas
or
que hay
about
en
the
la ciudad.
problems that are in the city.
Yo creo que eso es
I think that
algo de mayor valor.
that is something of greater value.
Y pienso que
And I
venimos
think
a esta
that
ciudad
we came to this city
para tener principios y
to have
valores
principles and values,
para vivir en armonía.
to live in harmony.
Estamos preocupados
We are worried
realmente
about
por el tráfico
for the traffic.
cuando ni siquiera le
When
podemos decir
we can't
a mi
even
vecino
tell,
buenos días o buenas
when I
tardes.
can't even tell my neighbor good morning.
Yo creo que tenemos que reflexionar así
I think we
mismos.
have to reflect on ourselves
Y debemos de hacer el egoísmo a un lado
and leave selfishness to the side.
y espero que nos den la
And
oportunidad
I hope that you will give us the
que cuando
opportunity
nosotros
that when
podemos
we
envejecer,
can grow old,
podemos ayudar a los más jóvenes
we can help the younger
a construir una ciudad que tenga principios
to
y
build
valores
a city that has principles and values
que nos haga ser
that will
ganadores
make us successful or winners
y podemos construir una mejor ciudad.
and build a better city.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Christian Harrison, followed by Ken Simon.
Good evening. I've seen you here before. I'm here on behalf of the Downtown Community Council, and we would urge you to vote in favor of the ADU unit. Our council actually doesn't include any single-family dwellings, but we recognize that a rising tide lifts all ships, and we believe that the availability of more affordable housing, or more housing period, will make our entire city more vibrant, more livable, our businesses more profitable, and our citizens able to age in place and to contribute to their community in greater ways. We are concerned a little bit, of course, you know, anything in city politics, you know, you pull one thread and it pulls lots. We're a little concerned, of course, about how this will play into, for example, design requirements, tear downs, and historical building considerations, but we have faith that the council will be able to mitigate those issues as they move forward. We are also concerned about the parking requirement. The 25 unit limit, I think, is a good way to do the test run, so to speak. We hope to see that lifted, but if we have the parking requirement in place, then I think we'll not get a true test, because that parking requirement will change the complexion of who can and can't be involved in this trial run. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Ken Simon, followed by Michael Iverson.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Ken Simon. I'm in the Rose Park area, and I'd just like to let you know that I am in support of the ADU unit resolution. My concerns are that 25 applicants, I'm not sure if this is still right, but only 25 people can apply per year. If that's true, it seems like it already is a pilot project. I'd like to expand a little more. What I fear is that contractors will gobble up before residents will have a chance to apply. Those who know the system can apply faster, or they know, how to get through the process a lot faster. So that's my major concern. The other thing is taxes. I do have a friend in Portland, Oregon, who is he's attempting to, as I mentioned, the person mentioned that the cost is fairly inexpensive to create an ADU, but the problem is your property tax goes up so high that now all of a sudden he's actually taxed out of his home. So I'm not sure if that's going to be looked at and what that will look like for homeowners in the area that would like to do it. So obviously it may not fit for people in the avenues, but for Rose Park, other parts, I think it's a great idea. So thank you very much. I support it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Michael Iverson, followed by Bernie Hart.
Thank you. I usually speak on behalf of my community council, but I want to make it clear that I'm not at this point. I know this is a very controversial issue. Frankly, ADUs will cause some problems in some neighborhoods, particularly related to parking. But frankly, as a city, we have too much parking. We use our cars too much. You can taste it in the air. I think ADUs are a good way to help build affordable housing. Yes, the ADUs themselves may not necessarily be affordable, but it raises the housing stock and requires, if you've got 1,000 more units suddenly on the market, it requires landlords to look at their prices, and growing that stock will help bring the price down. So that's why I support ADUs. Maybe instead of going through a complicated planning process for a neighborhood to allow ADUs, we can go through a complicated planning process to have a neighborhood opt out of ADUs. Just something to consider. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Bernie Hart, followed by Annie Dayton.
Busy night. One of the things I often thought about in the homeless context is the number of beds in Salt Lake that are empty. The empty nesters, people leaving, you build a house. When your kids are 7 years old, all of a sudden they all need a bedroom, and they live there for about 8 years or 10 years, and all of a sudden you're home alone and you have 3 empty rooms, and what do you do with them? The kids are no longer there. And so using those to provide housing or alternative space for a number of reasons just makes sense in the context of efficiency, but also in environmental impact. When you are Salt Lake is trying to do an excellent job and take a leadership role in the country on environmental impact, and 2 families in one house where one used to live just makes environmental sense. you have one furnace, you have the same amount of heat, same amount of space, a lot of the same environmental impact, the footprint, the use footprint goes way down. So just in that factor, it makes a lot of sense, and and economic reasons for people that are can no longer afford where they live for environmental reasons, that it gives them an opportunity to stay in the neighborhood they've lived in all their lives. And it provides an opportunity for young families, students at the U and different people to come in and stay in a stable neighborhood. So just a couple of thoughts while I was listening to the discussion. So thanks. I would like to see you do whatever you could do to get some additional housing.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Annie Dayton, followed by Robert Goodman.
Hi, my name is Annie Dayton. I live in Rose Park, and I support the expansion of ADUs. My first home when I was married was a top of the garage accessory dwelling unit, and it allowed me to be close enough to a bus stop so I could take a bus to school instead of getting another car and having to drive. So I do think it would help decrease traffic for people that can be in neighborhoods that are close to buses, and I think a lot of people want to be in Salt Lake City, and so we can either have people driving out from further in the suburbs or taking public transportation in the city. I personally want to build an ADU in my home, and we're planning on undergoing a renovation. We're working with an architect, and we want to do things the right way. But I don't agree with the requirement to have off-street parking. I think that is going to be really hard for us personally, that we wouldn't be able to do it if that is a requirement. And I think in my neighborhood, there's plenty of on-street parking, so I don't think that's a problem. Maybe it's different for other neighborhoods, but at least for Rose Park, I would really like to see that expansion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Robert Goodman, and this is my last card. If someone else would like to address us about ADUs, please get a card, and we'd love to hear from you.
Hello, my name is Robert Goodman. Thank you for having me. I wasn't intending on speaking, but yeah, I am a homeowner in District 5, and I would like to speak in support of the ADU ordinance. I was just reading through the 5-year housing plan, and indeed, 85% of our workforce commutes from other cities into Salt Lake City. If we had more housing available here, it would cut down on commuters. Also, I feel compelled to speak about a personal experience. A couple years back, I was a full-time student as part of a scholarship, and I was working 2, sometimes 3 jobs. If it had not been for an ADU unit, and relatively low rent, my life would have been a lot harder. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this type? Come forward. And just a minute, Mr. Berenson, there's someone ahead of you. A couple people. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tanya Merrill. I have been a homeowner in Sugar House for over 20 years, and I do have a mother-in-law apartment, and I do agree with the proposal, although I do think it needs to be tweaked a little bit and fixed a little. It did allow my family, because we've had 5 generations living in that home at one time, and it was very convenient where the young could take care of the old and the old could take care of the young. My one issue with that is how far are you going to allow us to expand that? Because I would like to expand my ADU to make it more accommodating for modern living. The closets are terribly small. I mean, there's no storage. So I do agree with that. The parking issue. If I were to expand my ADU, is the city going to allow me to pour more cement on my property to put parking that doesn't take up street parking? Because as of right now, all 5 of the houses at the end of my street are all ADU or duplexes or ADUs. So the parking is just ridiculous. So if I were to allow to expand that, would I be allowed to pour more cement on my property? Does that make sense? So that I can utilize the property in a better fashion. And also I agree with the gentleman that said the environmental impact. It does help with that. And also, what was I just gonna say? The transit. I do have a bus stop literally at the end of my street. So it would, if you could get people to use the transit, it would cut down on the traffic. So thank you, that's all I had to say.
Thank you very much. This gentleman and then James Berenson. And will you be sure and fill out a card after you speak?
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Christian Larson. I just want to show my support for the ADU expansion, and I want to also mention I am in favor of it including tiny houses on wheels. They are cheap to build. They're $30,000 or less, and they are low impact on the environment. They're cheap to heat and cool. With the 25 house or the approval of 25 ADUs per year, I feel like that is a little bit low compared to the number of residents we have in the city who would be interested in building. But those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Berenson.
Does this correlate with the UN Strong City Initiative or Agenda 2030, trying to make it so middle-class residents can no longer have homes? They'll be forced into apartments with very little space and things like that? I've got all night.
You have 2 minutes, and you remember that we don't respond to questions during
Well,
this
see, if I was
part
Goldman
of our
Sachs,
night.
Mr. Luke would expand with me just like he did the last lady from Goldman Sachs. He interchanged with her quite a conversation. I'm not establishment enough for you to talk to.
As you've noticed, we don't respond to questions, but if you'd like to say something, go ahead. You have a
You
little bit more
respond
time.
to certain questions. It's just, it seems like you choose who you want to respond to. You don't want to answer the difficult questions. Freedom of speech. You guys complain about how long people can stand up here and talk, but that should have been part of your job. You should have known it, that you should allow residents to have as much time as they need to express their thoughts and feelings on certain issues. That should be part of your jobs. But Goldman Sachs, right, boss?
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address ADUs? Come forward. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Jenny Rochot. I did not plan on speaking. I don't really know much about this, but my concern would be that people will end up using their ADUs for nightly rentals, which I'm not opposed to, but in this situation, if we allow ADUs to happen throughout the city and people end up using them as nightly rentals because it's more lucrative for them, then we then we put stress on the neighborhood infrastructure, parking, all that stuff, and we haven't solved any housing problems for the the housing shortage for Salt Lake City. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address ADUs this evening? Okay, come forward and then you can fill out a card afterwards. Just be sure and say your name. And remember, we are having another hearing on this on the 3rd.
My name is Julie Chitris, and I am opposed to ADUs. Currently, I have a house across the street from me that is being rented up and down, and parking is a nightmare for me. I love those gentlemen across the street, but the homeowner does not live in the state. He does not keep the house in good repair, and parking is in front of my house and all the way down the street for the people who live across the street. So as far as I'm concerned, ADUs would only increase the parking problem in my neighborhood. So I am against it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentleman in the back. And will you fill out a card, please, ma'am? Thank you.
My name is Ali Sabah. I had a comment that was written. You can discard that. But I just wanted to say with regards to this matter that I, like everybody else, I'm in favor of more housing in the city and more efficient use of urban space. However, I feel that this ADU ordinance is a little bit of a blanket kind of a thing that does not look at every neighborhood and consider what the neighbors in that neighborhood, what the residents want. Obviously, there are certain neighborhoods that not only want ADUs, but need ADUs, and for that, I'm all for it. But please allow us as residents of certain neighborhoods to have a little power and say over what's happening in our immediate spaces and next door to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment about ADUs? If you missed your chance, you can come back in 2 weeks and we'll be happy to hear from you. Not seeing anyone else, I will look for a motion to close this hearing.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and note that a second public hearing on the accessory dwelling unit petition is scheduled for October 3rd.
Second.
Motion by Council Member Penfold, seconded by Council Member Rogers. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
I would just request that our chair and vice chair don't schedule 8 other public hearings with the next ADU public hearing ordinance. I am grateful that we have opportunities for everyone to speak. It was mostly tongue-in-cheek, but this was a
So
heavy...
I'm responding to the request by council members to get lots of work done before the end of the year, so
Just not all
I
in
will
one
not comply to that request.
Is there further discussion? I'd like to just make a comment. I think it's important to clarify that under our current zoning, you may have someone who is related to you living in your house. So you could have your elderly parents, or you could have your college students if they never want a job and want to go away and go to school forever, like some of us were prone to do. I don't know anyone that my parents might say that anyway. But I think it's important to recognize that right now we have the ability to do that. So we aren't looking to throw parents or children out on the street, or anyone who's related to you, that you can do that. So with that, all those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. And our last public hearing is item B9 regarding an ordinance amending various sections of Title 21A of the Salt Lake City Code pertaining to homelessness resource centers. And is there anyone who wishes to speak to this? And do we have cards? We do. Thank you. We'll begin with John Prince, followed by Ryan Parker.
Yeah, so I've been sitting and thinking about this for a little bit. I'm a real estate investor, and I live in the Salt Lake area. And I know there's a lot of feeling around the word homeless whenever we talk about this issue, whether it's the shelters. And I was trying to do some soul searching, and I realized that I don't really have a problem with, more shelters or anything that's truly helping homeless people. What I really have a problem with is drugs and the drug problem downtown. And what I saw is an increase in the drug problem around Rio Grande, and that was pretty obvious. There was a lot of crime. And my concern is with these new shelters that I've been hearing are going to be going in the next couple of years, that if we don't have the proper mechanisms in place to police them, that the drug problem will increase to other areas besides Rio Grande. So I guess I just want that to be thought about as we're, having these different amendments going forward for the shelters, that we do what we can to just decrease the crime and the drug problem that surrounds those, or that tends to surround those, and that we try and make sure that those are really going forward for the people that really need that help. Like I said, I don't have any problem helping the people or wanting people that need that help to get it. I just don't want downtown to turn into just this bed of crime and drugs. And like I said, I live downtown, and I owned a home downtown that got broken into. And I'd be sitting out on my porch at night, and people are just walking by like zombies, and they'll stop and start screaming at you. That's what I don't want. And so I guess, just as we're thinking about putting these new shelters downtown, let's put a lot of thought into how we can decrease that problem. Whatever you guys did on Rio Grande, it seems to be helping. I know there's a lot of feeling around that issue as well, but I drove by it today, and it seems like it's a lot better than it was. So, thanks.
Thank you. And board members, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege. If you want to speak to one of our council staff members, next week we are having meetings where the design is being discussed about how to make it so that it is safe and in our new resource centers. And do we have a staff member who raised their hand who could? Okay, Liz Bueller, who isn't council staff but who knows all about it. She can tell you when those are being held next week.
So that'll be discussed at the next week meeting?
Not at this, they're separate meetings, and she can tell you all about it. Bernie Hart. And Bernie will be followed by Ryan Parker.
Bernie Hart, Salt Lake City. One of the issues I've had with the shelters, I've had a number of issues. And my main issue is the reduction in the number of beds and the inability of the county and Mayor McAdams and his staff and people in the collective impact to provide data in support of the programs, the successful implementation of the programs anywhere in the country. And a number of us have asked for data and had no luck. And so we have no confidence in these the shelters functioning the way they're planned on functioning, and overload is one of my concerns, because if the programs don't work the way they're going to work, there's going to be demands for more and more beds in the shelters that are built. And unless Mayor McAdams can back up his rhetoric with data, research data that shows this works somewhere and it's not just a pipe dream, I'm nervous about the situation. And I do that not just concerned for my neighborhood, which I have, but for the homeless themselves. And that means they're not getting services that help them out of homelessness. The system is failing. And the other is the drugs. Nobody yet has been able to give me an idea or answer the questions. Are drug addicts actively on drugs going to be allowed into the shelters? For me, that's a concern. Not that I wouldn't like to see them come into the shelter and get the services they need because they need services, but the treatments are failing. None of the treatments through Operation Diversion have shown to impact the ability to impact the drug population or transition people out of addiction. One person out of the first possibly data over time with a rate of relapse will be successfully transitioned out of homelessness, out of addiction. And if addicts are allowed into the facilities and there's not a high rate of transition, it's going to create problems for the neighborhood, because they are going to seek drugs somewhere, and they're either going to want people to bring them into the shelter, or they will go into our neighborhoods looking for drugs. And I don't care what Representative Hughes says, he is not going to drive drugs out of the state of Utah as much as he would like to talk about it and brag about it. Those are going to exist. They exist right now, and people can find them no matter what he's doing. So I'm afraid that's going to come into our neighborhood unless the regulations somehow deal with that effectively. So I wish you would really look hard at that, and whatever you could do, I'd appreciate it. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you. Ryan Parker, followed by Christian Harrison.
Thank you. Again, wow, feeling a little bit tired makes me not as anxious to be up here, so that's, I guess, a plus. The first order passed, and I wish it didn't, but, you know, I don't want to talk about past or what's presently going on. We're looking at these new resource centers, and we're looking at the future of how we serve those experiencing homelessness. I don't want to throw mud. I don't want to insult. I want to actually plead to a group of intellectuals, a group of scholars, people who own businesses, people who know public policy, and I want to plead to your rationale, and I want to plead to your compassion. And what I'm here to discuss, and what I'm here to discuss on October 3rd, for you to take into October 17th, is this amendment. We must not have a cap of 200. We look at an 1,100-bed shelter that is full every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that continues to grow, especially during the the winter season. If you would like to make these amendments to accommodate that during winter season, that's fine, and you can make a valid argument during our summer months. However, if South Salt Lake, designs their shelters the way they've already discussed with barriers, then their 300-bed shelter might as well just only hold 100. The 400-bed deficit is going to continue to grow, and it will grow, and it will grow. And it won't just be hundreds of men outside during the winter hours who just couldn't be self-sufficient and pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Their wives and their lovers will follow them out into the cold with them. I'm begging you, I will bang my head against the wall until something can at least be acknowledged with the fact that we need bigger boats. Less is not more. And over time that will be shown, because we all can recognize and acknowledge that at least a decent portion of homelessness is a systemic issue. And if the state doesn't back that up, if the county does, then that falls on us, and we cannot, and I repeat that, cannot have a 200-bed cap, and I will finally just leave on this because I'm tired and I want to go to bed, is that if we just draw a hard line now in just 200 beds, then 3 years, we're not just going to be talking about 2 resource centers. We're going to need at least 3 more.
Thank you very much. Christian Harrison, followed by Rick Osguthorpe.
Good evening. As chair of the Downtown Community Council, now going 11 years, I've been active in the discussion of surrounding homelessness. I've been on all the commissions that have been involved, and I'm really excited about where we are as a community. I'm excited that we are all facing the same direction, and I'm excited that there's momentum. I'm concerned, of course, that there's still some disagreement between the various parties, and I think that that's getting in the way of success. But on this point, I'm in support of the amendment, the zoning amendment, including the 200-bed cap. I'd like to see movement orthogonally to this, to having community-based, as we've discussed in private, community-based oversight committees for each of these centers, as I think that is the best way for us to build a lasting, sustainable relationship with the host neighborhoods. And I leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rick Osguthorpe, followed by James Berenson.
Hi. I'm a business owner, and they are putting this homeless shelter right behind me. There'll be a fence or whatever they're going to do there. I had my building leased out. It was a renewal, and they would not renew it. And so the building has been vacant. I've had other tenants want to come lease it. They've asked me, you know, is a homeless shelter going to be here? And they say, no, we don't want to lease it. Good luck. I don't know what that's going to do to the value of my building, which is my retirement. They were worried about the security, what we're going to do to keep it from being vandalized or people camping out on the premises. And my neighbor has put his building up for sale because he's in the same predicament as me. He sold his business to his employees. His employees are refusing to stay there, so as soon as their lease is up, they're leaving also. So we have these buildings which are our retirements, which we cannot sustain and lease. And so we're in a hard spot and we need some help. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Mr. Berenson, is there anyone else who would like to address us on the zoning text amendment regarding Matt Minkovich? If there was someone's hand in front of yours, I missed it.
Okay, and I will yield the time if there is. Again, critical issues before you. Capacity was one observation that was brought before you tonight. I think that we understand that capacity will be an issue. Capacity can be handled when we have people moving out of shelters more rapidly. And in order to do that, housing and the challenges that you're facing in creating more affordable housing is also one of the potential solutions. Permanent supportive housing is also a potential solution. We have to get our arms around numerous problems. Again, no new news here, but it's important to look at each of these things individually and collectively. There are so many people who are struggling with challenging personal issues that would benefit from help that certain services can provide that are currently not available. Again, no new news, but it is something that we have to work on. We have 200 of our highest users of shelter right now consuming a significant number of shelter beds every single night. We can count on 200 people there night after night. Half of them are over the age of 50 to 55. Many of them are 60 and could be eligible for senior housing that exists. We need to get our arms around that. As we start to break down this problem into manageable components, not everyone coming to the shelter is suffering with addiction. Some are, many are. Addiction is pervasive throughout our community, we understand that. But if we can look and break down these problems and look at them thoughtfully, we can start to see that these are manageable numbers. Okay, we had 8,000 different people come to us over the course of last year and need a shelter. Not everyone needed financial assistance in order to get out of homelessness. These are problems with solutions. Complex,
Time.
yes, but let's work together and think about it in a way that we can manage it most effectively. I know you're trying to do that. Let's remember to keep that in mind.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address this evening? All right, seeing no one else, we have 2 hearings scheduled for this item. We'll talk about it again on October 3rd. I'll look for a motion to close this hearing.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and note that a second public hearing on the Homeless Resource Center amendment is scheduled for October 3rd.
Second.
And which is why I am unwilling to commit to not having any more long meetings, is because we've already scheduled some pretty long meetings for October 3rd.
There is a motion by Councilmember Penfold, seconded by Councilmember Mendenhall. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Section C, we have no potential action items on our agenda. And we are now to Section D of our agenda, questions to the mayor from the City Council. The mayor couldn't be with us tonight, so we have Patrick Leary representing her Chief of Staff. Council members, do you have any questions for Mr. Leary? If you do not, I do. I would like to encourage the administration to, I guess, to comment to you, or maybe I can phrase it as a question. I'll pretend I'm on Jeopardy or something. Do we have a plan to do outreach about what the final ADU looks like, since we have been a little slow because of the changes we made a couple of weeks ago in having the final thing? Are we looking to do outreach to share with people what the new legislation, proposed legislation looks like? I've had a number of people contact me and say, I don't know what it looks like. Do we have a plan for this?
I think our staff are working on a plan, and certainly I heard that loud and clear tonight, so.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? All right. Then we move to the part of our agenda where it is questions to the City Council, and this can be on any topic rather than just a public hearing, and I will accept cards, call on people based on the comment cards, and again remind you we would invite you to be polite and respectful. And thanks to those of you who hung on till the bitter end. Thank you for being here. And we'll begin this evening with Don Mignola, and Douglas Cotant has left, so and Kay Chatterton will follow you.
Congratulations, you did very well on that last name.
Oh, thank you.
And to the members of the board. I've got an awful lot to say, but I'm going to squeeze it into this 2 minutes. You've all been given a piece of paper which has 2 things on it. I also have a very extensive program, but that's for another time. I've been involved in trying to reduce the pollution in the air for many, many years. As a matter of fact, I came to Utah to work on an electric car project. And Dee Cordini was the mayor, and back there I gave her a cord that she stuck in where the gas tank used to be. That was for the print media, and then she drove around the circle for the TV groups. But I read something recently, the last few months, and that was a study made by UCLA Medical. They concluded that pregnant women, if they are exposed to polluted air, their offsprings are more likely to have lung, brain, and heart damage. And I concluded we can't wait to get all the air cleaned up. We got to do something about this. So some of us took this on and we said, we need to make indoor air clean. That's not an easy thing to do, especially with existing homes. But we have plans that will do that. And as we worked on this and looked at all the different things to do, we realized that it made more sense to do a lot of other things at the same time because these things complemented each other. As a matter of fact, we know now that we can actually reduce cost by doing all of these things.
Time.
Okay, just quickly, some of these things are high tech. I'm from the Silicon Valley. There's no problem there. I'm asking you to be open to those ideas. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for hanging with us all day. Kay Chatterton, followed by James Berenson.
Thank you, Lisa Adams. My name is Kay Chatterton, and I live at 821 East, 900 South in Salt Lake City, also affectionately known as Harvey Milk Boulevard. And I want to say hi to David Litbeck, who has been a hero of mine, and I haven't seen him forever, so hi, David. When I listen to the scope of what you've been considering and the work you have to do, some very difficult problems to solve, and mine is not that difficult. I met Erin at the 9th and 9th Festival on Saturday and started talking to her about dog parks. And she said, why don't you come and give a testimony speak your piece at the City Council, so that's why I'm here. I think I missed that I should have gotten in on number 6 with the capital outlay. I think maybe that's where I should have talked about it. And living in my house for 30 years in the heart of the 9th and 9th area, there's been a lot of changes. And with density, not only comes parking, it becomes more people with pets. And that Harvey Frank Pet Dog Park is nearest my house. And so that's where I've gone with, since I retired, I could get a dog. You know, I had time to have a dog. And that park is so highly used. And I would invite you to come over any day of the week, and you will find, like yesterday morning, there were 50 dogs in that park that came and went by 10:30 in the morning. And that, you know, that's only just in the morning. So it's really highly used. And when you remodeled and cleaned it, when you closed the park in February for a month, I took my pup and went to explore all the other dog parks in the city. And all dog parks are not equal, and all dog parks are not equally used. The one on the Harvey Frank one is really highly used. Now, in the new setup you've put up with the sand, there's mixed reviews on some of that. But it still needs a lot of investment because of its use. And so for my opinion, we need more dog parks. Time. Okay. Thank you very much. And I'd just like to say on the ADU, I live in that place, and what's changed since I've lived there for 30 years is it's not as diverse as it used to be. And that really bothers me. And it's because of the affordable housing. So we need to keep the diversity. Thanks.
Thank you very much. James Berenson, Christian Larson, followed by Jeff Bear. Christian Larson. Jeff Bear.
Yes, it's me.
Okay.
I've been meaning to come for several weeks, haven't been able to, and I think this was the wrong night to come. It is 10 o'clock. Okay. I wanted to come because of talk of the airport tracks line, and I've tried to look online at designs and everything else, and it seems to me that we're often short-sighted, and it seems that everyone's looking at the airport as the end of the line. And to me, it shouldn't be developed that way. It should be designed and planned so that it continues, especially as the city's going to be building out the Northwest Quadrant. There's the prison, there's the support personnel, there's families of inmates. They're all going to need transportation, and it just seems a no-brainer that tracks would continue on past the airport. And I just hope that that's being considered. And again, it's not being looked at as the airport's the end of the line. It's going to go there and it's not going to go any further. And that was my only comment. So thank you and have a good night.
Thank you very much. And that is my last card. Is there anyone else who would like to say anything to the City Council? All right, then I will turn my page and we will move to one item of new business.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move that the council adopt the resolution declaring an intent to adjust the boundary of the Salt Lake City Mosquito Abatement District to include more of Salt Lake City and to set the date of November 21st, 2017 to accept public comment on the proposal.
Second.
There's a motion by Council Member Luke, seconded by, I couldn't tell, you said it all together.
It was Councilmember Kitchen this time.
Okay, Councilmember Kitchen. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda with the exception of item G6, board appointment of Sean Umapeg, who will be rescheduled for a future meeting.
Motion by Councilmember Penfold, seconded by Councilmember Luke. Any discussion? All those in favor of adopting
Aye.
the consent agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. And I think, want to make sure I'm not missing out on anything. No, just want to check every single page. Okay.
There we go, Lisa.
There we go. We are adjourned.